What's going on, everybody? Welcome to TPUSA Live. I'm one of your hosts, Jon Root. Sitting next to you,
Isabel Brown, and I have to say, shocking news, Jon Root, you are an outfit repeater.
I mean, we got to promote the shirt.
We love the shirt. Let's go, Brandon. It's going to be a Let's Go, Brandon day here on TPUSA Live. We're so excited.
You got to give me a break, and you have to give me a break because these shirts are awesome, and I might just wear it the rest of the week.
They are. They're great. We got some more colors coming, too, I'm hearing. So very exciting.
We got SEC colors, so go to shoptpusa.com, get one of these Let's Go Brandon shirts. But here's what you can look forward to in today's live stream. Human Events Daily with Jack Posobiec. He's going to cover the National Institute of Health admitting funding the WAB in Wuhan.
The lab in Wuhan, China. Shocking information, honestly, because they're going against Dr. Fauci in doing this. He has openly said over and over and over again, we've never funded any such research. We have no such relationship with the Wuhan laboratory. They're responsible for allegedly dealing with this coronavirus. So I think there's a lot more information to come.
Yeah, Jack's going to break that all down. Also, President Biden's support among independents is plummeting.
Whoop, whoop.
Everything is going downhill with President Biden. Shocker.
Let's
Crazy.
go, Brandon. Am I right? The shirt says Brandon.
It all. Way to go, Brandon. And then right after that, I'll be sitting on the couch with some incredible guests. Like we got Alex Clark, this gal right here, Isabel Brown, Garrett Powell from that's the 15th season of The Bachelorette.
He is honestly one of my favorite people, so I'm so excited that Garrett is here in Phoenix today with us. And we have a very special person from my life coming to be on the show as well, Gabby Reichardt, who is a student activist of ours from Colorado State University, my alma mater. She has been dealing with some of the craziest situations I've ever heard from college campuses in the last few weeks, being banned from her public college campus for being unvaccinated for COVID-19. Absolutely crazy. So she'll share her story with us later today on the show. Very excited to hear more.
I'm always excited to talk to college students because I know when I was in college, it feels like 14 decades ago. I feel so old at times.
Oh, so old.
But the stuff they have to deal with right now is absolutely baffling.
Oh, it blows my mind.
I never had to deal with any of this stuff. Like, I graduated in 2015, and politics was not a huge part of my life or my college experience.
Yeah, I started in 2015, and I think it was really the 2016 election that for me was such a pivotal moment for college, or all of my classes really, and the whole college environment being so saturated with politics all the time. And at the time, CSU, Colorado State, where I went, was so crazy that I literally wrote the book on it, and even I don't recognize what has happened to my college campus with how absolutely insane Marxist, socialist, you name it, it has gotten. So I'm so excited to hear more from Gabby with a state of campus for us on TPUSA Live today.
It's going to be great. We're also going to share Condoleezza Rice's comments on CRT on The View. She absolutely dismantles it, and it's great. We're going to show you that and have a good little discussion. Also, we got Real Deal or Fake News, one of my favorite games.
So fun.
Also, we got debate night with Charlie Kirk. He's going to debate Democratic Socialist college professor Ben Burgess.
I love that title, as if people still think they can get away with using Democratic Socialist. Here we go. But it's a great debate. They're going to be talking about how socialism actually is responsible for killing millions of people throughout history and destroying societies. Charlie does a great job holding his own.
And then you got Benny on the block with our guy, Benny Johnson.
Benny on the block.
He's going to go out and interview people in St. Petersburg in Florida, asking people if they support President Joe Biden, and if they do or do not, what's been some of their favorite moments. Probably a lot of Let's Go Brandons.
Let's Go Brandons down there in Florida. And we are wrapping things up today with some more Alex Clark in the newest episode of POPlitics, where she gets a little spicy. She's telling Channing Tatum to grow up already. Come on, Channing Tatum. What happened with a 911 dispatch center disaster in Denver? Paris Hilton is in Washington, D.C. playing politician right now. The Pop Culture Rewind and even more.
Yeah, I love POPlitics because I need to get up to speed with what's going on in pop culture because I don't know. Even The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, I'm excited to talk to Garrett about that because I don't watch it.
Oh, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stories I bet that Garrett could give you from The Bachelor.
I can't wait. I'll talk to him a lot about golf. We
you guys could definitely connect on that. I, too, do not watch any of the Bachelor franchise. I've watched one episode of The Bachelorette. I'm really just not into dating reality shows, I think. But there are a lot of people who really, really love it. So POPlitics does a great job, I think, tuning us into what's happening in the pop culture world.
Much so. But before we let you go, so it sounds like a family lawyer from the Laundrie family said a probability is strong that partial human remains are Brian Laundrie's. So when they went on that search, it's still so strange to me that they find these while Brian Laundrie's parents are helping out. I know we got some more information about that coming out on our social media channels all over the place, but we got a great live stream for you today. Coming up next, Human Events Daily with Jack Posobiec.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition Human Events Daily. First up today, the NIH has admitted, as we all knew, that they did actually fund gain-of-function testing in Wuhan. Next, Anthony Fauci, Dr. Fauci's money. Where does it come from? We're going to break down a new report on it. Third, the president of the FOP is warning against vaccine mandates across the country. And then finally, Biden's approval ratings in absolute free fall. We're going to break that down. All of this and more ahead. Human Events Daily. So everybody remembers a few months ago, it was over the summer, when Dr. Fauci and Senator Rand Paul really got into it over this issue of whether or not the National Institute of Health and his specific agency, his department under the NIH, funded gain-of-function in Wuhan, right? And they got into this huge debate over it. Fauci was screaming at him, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the clip. Here's a reminder of it.
Now you're getting into something. If the point that you are making is that the grant that was funded as a sub-award from EcoHealth to Wuhan created SARS-CoV-2. That's where you are getting. Let me finish.
We don't know.
Well,
we don't
wait
know
a minute.
If it did come from the lab, but all the evidence is pointing that it came from the lab, and there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including yourself.
I totally
This committee will allow the witness to respond.
I totally resent the lie that you are now propagating, Senator, because if you look at the viruses that were used in the experiments, that were given in the annual reports, that were published in the literature, it is molecularly impossible.
No one's saying those viruses caused it.
It
no
is
one is alleging that
molecularly.
those viruses caused the pandemic. What we're alleging is that gain-of-function research was going on in that lab, and NIH funded it.
That is
you can't
not.
get away from it. It meets your definition, and you are obfuscating the truth.
I'm not obfuscating the truth.
Senator
You are the
Paul's
one.
time is expired, but I will allow the witness to.
Let me just finish. I want everyone to understand that if you look at those viruses, and that's judged by qualified virologists and evolutionary biologists, those viruses are molecularly impossible
No one's
to
saying
result
they are. No
in
one's saying those viruses
SARS-CoV-2.
caused the pandemic.
Senator Paul,
We're saying they are gain-of-function viruses because they were
they're not.
animal viruses that became more transmissible in human, and you funded it.
And you
admit the truth.
And you
Senator
implying.
Paul, your time has expired, and I will allow witnesses who come before this committee to respond.
And you are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individual. I totally resent
could
that.
have
And
been.
if anybody
could
is
have been.
lying here, Senator, it is you.
But in a new letter that just came out October 20th, 2021, it's a response to James Comer, and it is from Lawrence Tabak, the principal deputy director of the NIH. Well, it's important to state at the outset that public genomic data demonstrate that the bat coronavirus is studied under the NIH, blah, 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 blah. Hold on, here it comes. The money they funded to EcoHealth Alliance went towards research that did end up funding a study that produced gain-of-function pathogens, full stop. Then, what do? Of course, they put the blame on EcoHealth. This was always the point of using a cutout organization like EcoHealth Alliance. This was always the point of having Peter Daszak up there. He was the scapegoat. So now what are they saying? Listen to this. This is typical bureaucracy, by the way. This is typical bureaucracy, right? You caught us in a lie. Rand Paul was completely right, 100% right. This program was right. I was right. You were right. EcoHealth failed to report this finding right away as was required by the terms of the grant. EcoHealth is being notified that they have 5 days from today to submit to NIH any and all unpublished data from the experiments and work conducted under this award. Additional compliance efforts continue. Rah, rah, rah. We're very upset that they would do this. You got caught. You got caught with your hand in the cookie jar. Maybe you got caught with your hand in the wet market, right? We understand what happened. Quit the blame game. Admit what you did. Admit you were at fault. Admit you made a violation. And by the way, Dr. Anthony Fauci kind of feels like misrepresented what happened while under oath inside the United States Senate. Almost feels like, what's that word again? It's kind of a legal phrase. Oh, right, perjury. Senator Rand Paul should refer Dr. Anthony Fauci to the Department of Justice under this, right? We already see that the Jan 6 committee and the Rules Committee are going to refer Steve Bannon for not even testifying to the Unconstitutional Committee, so might as well refer Dr. Fauci as well, right? Go ahead. Just keep referring people. Dr. Fauci actually knowingly lied about a material matter to a United States senator under oath. And it was in a situation where money from the taxpayer was going to fund experiments in Wuhan in a CCP-controlled, military-linked bio laboratory. Dr. Anthony Fauci. Aren't we so proud of the good doctor? Don't we just, hold him up? You've got people across the United States, some people even worship this guy, right? It is getting a little weird. You see these kind of pillows they do, the songs, the dress up. They've got pillows for Anthony Fauci. It's ridiculous. But if you go to mypillow.com and utilize promo code POSTOVER up to 66% off. No, seriously, you can get some great gifts for your kids, gifts for your family. Get your order in at MyPillow right now. Beat the supply chains, beat China, support American workers. And, we don't need Dr. Fauci pillows. The great thing about MyPillow, you go in, you get they have the smaller pillows. They're the travel and go pillows. And they've got what they have on them? Bible stories. Stories of the nativities, the story of Christmas, Noah's Ark, right? Daniel in the Lion's Den. It's incredible stories that you can get, that you can share with your kids, pass on the traditions. That's what we have for my son. Takes his daycare with him. He loves it. He absolutely loves it. But Dr. Fauci, I don't want you on my pillows. No. And speaking of Christmas, by the way, Dr. Fauci has some thoughts about Christmas that he shared with Senator Marsha Blackburn. Take a listen.
And Dr. Fauci, lastly, we know the best way to keep safe is to be vaccinated. But what are your guidelines for the upcoming holidays? Will you be giving out Halloween candy? What do we do Thanksgiving, Christmas, and the other holidays?
Well, Martha, I believe strongly that, particularly in the vaccinated people, if you're vaccinated and your family members are vaccinated, those who are eligible, and that is obviously very young children are not yet eligible, that you can enjoy the holidays. You can enjoy Halloween, trick-or-treating, and certainly Thanksgiving with your family and Christmas with your families. That's one of the reasons why we emphasize why it's so important to get vaccinated, not only for your own safety, for that of your family, but also for the good of the community to keep the level of infection down. When you do that, there's no reason at all why you can't enjoy the holidays in a family way, the way we've traditionally done it all along.
And for his wonderful work, his loyalty, and his service to the American people, I'd just like to know, and let all of you know, that according to a new report from Open the Books, I love these guys, Open the Books. I love the work they do because they actually dig, they put in the Freedom of Information Act requests, they get all of the stuff, they get the best stuff. Open the Books. Dr. Anthony Fauci received a big pay increase to prevent pandemics, thanks to biodefense. Dr. Anthony Fauci, this is according to their report that was published in Forbes, is the top paid federal employee, earning $434,312 in 2020. Fauci is the director of the National Institute of Health, National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases, and the current chief medical advisor to the president. Fauci out-earned the president, who only orders $400,000, four-star generals like the illustrious General Milley, $282,000, and roughly 4.3 million other federal employees. By the way, why do we have 4.3 million federal employees? Do we need 4.3 million federal employees? Can we take that number and just cut it in half? Because I kind of feel like, 2.15 million federal employees, if you could do the job of 4 million. Trust me, you could do it. I've been in the government, it could happen. According to new documents released via FOIA, NIH says that Dr. Fauci received a big pay hike for his biodefense research activities. In other words, Fauci was paid to prevent future pandemics. From 2004 to 2007, Fauci received a 68% pay increase from $200,000 to $335,000 a year. This award was permanent, a permanent pay increase. Nice work if you can get it, folks. Nice work if you can get it. And it carried forward all the way through 2020 because, of course, we haven't had any pandemics since 2004 until now. Included in this was a letter from Dr. Raynard Kingston, then the deputy director, which was approved and signed by the NIH director under Bush. This is to request that the current retention allowance for Dr. Anthony Fauci be converted to permanent pay. An adjustment in the amount over his base pay, so bonuses basically, in order to appropriately compensate him for the level of responsibility in his current position of director of the NIAID at the NIH, especially as it relates to his work on biodefense research activities. Dr. Fauci's work on biodefense to prevent pandemics. And we just learned in the last segment that the NIH admitted that their funding, which came directly through NIAID to EcoHealth Alliance, to the Wuhan lab, contributed to gain-of-function research. This is your United States government. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to embrace it. I want you to just reach out with both arms and give it a big ol' hug. Just give it a big ol' hug. This is what your taxpayer dollars are going towards. To Fauci, to this nonsense. It's complete nonsense. And on top of that, another 4.3 million federal employees. I kind of feel like you could get 43 guys off of Twitter, and they could probably do a better job than the 4.3 million on all of this stuff. They would say, don't give money to Wuhan. Wow, what a concept. What an absolute concept. And we're back now. I told you that we were going to be doing some of these coming forward. Tonight is the next fight night, or as we call it at Turning Point Live, debate night. Tonight we've got Charlie Kirk going up against socialist professor Ben Burgess. Who will tap out first? Know who I've got my money on, folks. I know who I got my money on. I'm just kidding. Don't gamble. Definitely don't gamble. No, but seriously, it's going to be a good debate tonight. Definitely go check that out during fight night. It's debate night. It's here on Turning Point Live. And we're going to be continuing to host these. Bring in somebody from the left, bring in someone from the right, a liberal, a conservative, sit down, and not just debate, but actually have conversations about these issues. That's one of the things that we've really lost in our society. We used to have programs where people did this, and then Jon Stewart came in and blew the whole thing up, and I'm really, really not a fan of Jon Stewart, and I think he's responsible for a lot of the division that we see in the country today. But it's another story. Talk about that later. Going forward, the National Fraternal Order of Police, the FOP, president has come out to discuss the problems with enforcing and cracking down on these vaccine mandates for police officers in the major cities, the major metropolitan areas of the United States. Listen to what he had to say.
Well, what is it in the police work or in the officers across the country that there is this hesitancy to get vaccinated, despite they're on the front lines of this pandemic and despite the toll that it's taken on law enforcement?
Well, Terry, first, I have to make it very clear that there's no question. The science shows that this is definitely a serious issue that needs to be addressed. And we recognize that. We encourage all of our members to be vaccinated. At the same time, we also recognize that we are a microcosm of society. There are people in this country that have a closely held belief that vaccinations are a personal choice, and we respect that. But we, at the same time, encourage our members to consult with the medical personnel and make an informed decision in order to protect them and their families. This is definitely a crisis that we need to address. I suggest that a lot of the problems that we see in this country where we're struggling with all of these mandates really was the wrong approach. The proper approach would have been to incentivize and to try and build some support around vaccinations as opposed to trying to force people to do it. Now, just simply look at it in terms of what it costs and the investments of a trained officer. What we're doing now is we're putting ourselves in a position where we're talking about taking trained personnel that cities have invested across this country in order to be able to get them to the point where they're effective officers, and telling them that although you operated for a year without a vaccination, and we appreciate it, now if you don't have one, we're going to cast you aside. So maybe the approach here is a little wrong, a little different. It could have been much more efficient if we would have built some consensus around vaccinations rather than trying to force it on people who are already skeptical of it.
And it really is as simple as that. He pointed out, he said these guys were serving for a year without a vaccine. Many of them probably at this point have attained natural immunity, like so many other people have, because they caught COVID, they've been on the job, they got it, they did the 2 weeks, they came back. And yet you're cracking down on this mandate saying you have to do this. And, you know, one of the weird things about this mandate too, and I hear people saying this as a kind of response, but total canard. They'll say, well, we've got other mandates, we've got other, mandatory things, other vaccine. Really? What other vaccination mandate did you require or have you been required to have before going on an airplane? The last time you bought an airplane ticket or any other time in your life? Or when you wanted to go see a movie? Or when you wanted to go into a restaurant? What vaccine card did you have to show? It's ridiculous. They haven't done anything like this before, right? I can talk, and I've talked before about being in the military, and I've told the stories about that. Sure, okay, 100%. But when it comes to everyone like this, and when it comes to our police officers, right, you'd really think, and the polling is coming out right now from Rasmussen, saying the public really isn't on board with this. When we've got people being raped in the city of Philadelphia on trains, on public transportation, and the police aren't able to do anything about it because they're stretched too thin and crime is completely out of control. And you got these ridiculous Soros-funded DAs that are just letting all this happen and letting these people out. You've got a serious problem. And the only people that would potentially stand in its way, you're going to go after them. Get out of cities. Folks, just get out of cities. I really don't know how to put it any more simply than that. Just don't be there. Next 5 years, maybe the next 10 years. This is not a good situation. The homicide rates are only going to go up. You need to get out. You need to be safe. Your families need to be safe. Well, Joe Biden's latest approval numbers are in, and they are sinking faster than the Titanic. And this, by the way, is out of Grinnell University. So go and take a listen to the pollster who was in charge of this, talking about this guy sinking like a rock.
And Seltzer, you asked about President Biden. We see in what you found, he's facing some of his lowest approval ratings yet. He's 37% approval, 50% disapproving. Which voters, what issues do you see behind this?
Right. Well, in terms of issues, we asked for approval ratings and how he's doing with immigration, where he scored very poorly, just 27% approving. We also took a look at how he's doing with COVID, and sadly, this is, you might say, is the high watermark for him. He still doesn't get 50% approval on how he's doing with COVID, and that's his benchmark issue. He also only gets 36% approval with the economy. And as the economy goes, so goes the president's standing. So it's no surprise that that number at 36 is almost exactly what his overall numbers are for approval. Two groups I would call out. One is that he gets more disapproval by a lot with independents than approval. So it's almost a 2-to-1 ratio, twice as many disapproving as approving, and independents were crucial to his electoral success. he is also underwater, not by as much, but with women. And women throughout the campaign were of his strongest supporters. He does better with suburban women, but not exactly a lot to be proud of. It's 46 to 38% more approving than disapproving, but he's not even halfway with suburban women.
Now you heard that particularly Joe Biden's polling numbers under independents are the ones that have tanked. Now remember, independents were the ones that really swung for President Biden under the 2020 election, because this was seen on the COVID issue as something where they trusted him and they thought that he was going to be doing better. Now it's a 2-to-1 ratio, disapproval to approval. So he's not only lost independents, they are leaving in droves. They are running from him like the absolute plague, or perhaps like COVID-19. And so now many people are asking, but Poso, you said that there was this huge shade war in the White House. So does that mean that Kamala Harris is not going to be embracing Joe Biden as much anymore? Well, take a look at this very authentic and very credible video.
Really? Oh, Joe. Oh, I'm very impressed. Thank you. Mwah. Thank you. Oh, look at how gorgeous. This is my favorite.
Got it. Thank you.
Oh, I'm going to hang this up with great pride. Thank you, Mr. President. You're welcome. See yours? Thank you. Thank you.
So as you can see, of course, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, they're just the best of friends. It's kind of funny. So Biden pulled this like fake relationship, this fake friendship that he had with Obama for all the 8 years that he was in the White House. But the problem is that it's just not working. So President Biden, Vice President Harris, there's no chemistry there. Neither of them can even fake their way through this. It's like watching The Office without the laugh track, right? This is so cringe that it's cringe. It's actually so cringe that it's cringe. I cringed when watching this. Joe Biden, not doing well there, Mr. President. Not doing very well at all. That's all the time we have for today on Human Events Daily. But remember our motto to you: be good, be brief, be gone. We give you the bottom line up front. So be the influence agent. Send this out to your normie friends. Get it out everywhere. Leave us a review, by the way. It really does help us out a lot. It really helps us with the rankings and everything else. And thank you, seriously, just thank you so much for watching this and continuing to support this and being part of this audience. We break these stories every day. It's a lot of work, but we want to be here for you, crunching all this information. But before we go, it's time for today's moment of history. This one, of course, U.S. Navy history, always very special to me. Today, the USS Constitution, the old Ironsides, the oldest frigate, commissioned warship still afloat, was launched up in Boston, Massachusetts. Old Ironsides, the USS Constitution, the symbol of the United States Navy. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission. Lay ashore.
You have to ask the question, how is the most heavily funded tribe have the poorest population?
Listen to me. My country is very because everything problem here. Don't have petroleum for bus and Cuban, for car, for drive, for nothing.
And it sucks. Socialism sucks. There's no other way you can describe it.
All right, I told you again, tonight is fight night. It's debate night. We got Charlie Kirk, we got Ben Burgess. It's going to be huge. Before we go to that, of course, we are followed by Hour 2, Jon Root and the entire crew over in Phoenix, Arizona. So from all of us in Washington, D.C., take it away, John.
Hey everyone, welcome to Turning Point USA headquarters in Phoenix, Arizona. As always, I'm your host, Jon Root, and this is TPUSA Live. Let's take a look at the rundown. First, we'll kick things off with a daily briefing. Next, we'll show you and react to Condoleezza Rice's powerful comments about CRT and parents' role in the school system. Then we'll chat with a TPUSA student activist from Colorado State University who was threatened with arrest for not complying with vaccine mandates. Finally, we'll play one of our favorite games, Real Deal or Fake News, and wrap things up with news about President Trump's brand new media company and one last thing. Get ready for a great show. TPUSA Live from HQ starts now.
Authentic, unfiltered, grassroots content and conversation every weekday. Live from Phoenix, Arizona at the Turning Point USA headquarters, this is TPUSA Live.
Once again, welcome back to TPUSA Live. Welcome to TPUSA HQ in Phoenix, Arizona. We got some incredible guests here. Like, look at this. From the spillover, the chicken nugget princess.
It's me, back again.
Let's go. Alex Clark is here. We also got the host of On the Front Lines, Freedom Seeds. Is there anything you can't do? It's Isabel Brown.
There is something I can do, and that's point out how great the purple looks on you now,
Let's
John.
go.
We got the Let's Go Brandon vibe all day long.
I thought it looked really good in Let's Go Brandon material until this guy right here, Garrett Powell.
Garrett Powell.
Man, Bachelorette contestant.
Oh yeah, I got dumped on your TV. Yeah, pretty good, huh?
You're a legend, Garrett. Come on, talk about yourself like that.
Guys, thanks for having me. I am. I'm here with greatness, though. I'm just trying to keep up with y'all.
Oh, you're the best, Garrett.
Yeah, that's very sweet. I don't know why you got dumped on TV. But we got to get you up to speed with the daily briefing. In this daily briefing, we're not going to be circling back on anything. We're going to tell you the truth right here, right now. So speaking of circling back, Press Secretary Jen Psaki. She thinks that if you're not getting your Christmas gifts, it's not a big deal. Check out this video.
It was clear in March of 2020 when COVID hit that the supply chains across the world have been disrupted. Even as the sort of work to fight back against COVID proceeded, it was crystal clear that things were not improving on supply chain. People couldn't get dishwashers and furniture and treadmills delivered on time, not to mention all sorts of other things. So why is it...
The tragedy of the treadmill that's delayed.
Right, the problem.
We're in a supply chain crisis, and then we have the press secretary that this is not about a treadmill. Like, get that out of the conversation. This is about Christmas gifts, and this is about an absolute crisis we're dealing with. And we're going to tell you a story about how some small businesses are being affected and might have to shut down. And then now we have the press secretary. It's like, it's not a big deal.
Well, it's very jarring to me. Every single time I see her speak or I see President Biden speak, I'm always reminded, everybody harped on how mean President Trump was. I've never seen a coldness and a disdain for the American people like I see from Press Secretary Jen Psaki and President Biden.
Yeah, I think, frankly, Jen could use a treadmill herself because exercise gives you endorphins, and endorphins make you happy. So at the end of the day, maybe we can get away from the frowning and the misery that we always see from the press briefing room these days. It is such a disappointment to me that we've arrived at this time where they don't even care that they're lying to the American people. It doesn't matter what outlet you're from. It doesn't matter what your background is in media. They have a complete disdain for you in that press briefing room, and they laugh, frankly, at the problem of the American people. Ultimately, this isn't about a treadmill. This isn't about Christmas gifts. This is about a supply chain shortage that's going to impact food and supplies that we need to live. And if we really care for the American people, and if you're really trying to unite the country, there's that word that they have used all of the time since Inauguration Day in January, you would be focused on every crisis that has surmounted under your administration, not laughing at it and making jokes from the press briefing room.
And then also this morning, so there was actually a deputy press secretary in for Jen Psaki this morning, and Peter Doocy, our guy from Fox News, he is always grilling them here. He just speaking up for everybody. He's saying, will Americans blame President Trump or President Biden for the supply chain crisis if they don't get their Christmas gifts? Because there's places like Susan Castorita from Kachina Safe. So that's a small business and a company that sells popular kitchen products on places like Amazon, Target, Walmart. They might be forced to shut down.
Yeah.
Now, so it's like you're trying to deflect constantly. What's your
it's like I'm very curious to see how they're the Biden campaign is going to try to spin this and blame this on former President Trump, because it's going to happen. I mean, we've seen it this whole year, right? So I'm trying to figure out in my head how they're going to try to do this, but there's just no way. It's almost like there's nowhere to hide with what's going on now, and people are seeing it for the first time.
And before we let you go, Aaron Rodgers, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, just absolutely torched the Chicago Bears and woke culture. Check it out.
There is this culture that exists that gets off, I think, on shrinking people, keeping them small, keeping them in a box, quieting them through cancelization or demeaning comments. And that I also exist outside of that in a different realm where I do feel confident in things I say, and I do stand behind what I do, and I like to speak the truth, and I'm not a part of this woke cancel culture that gets off on trying to silence people.
I love seeing people like Aaron Rodgers step up to the plate here. John, a few days ago, you and I were having a conversation about how cool it is to see athletes really make a difference culturally and impactfully in our country outside of the sport that they're playing. I think this is really just a wave that's only getting started, and I love seeing more people come out of the fold and start to make statements on some of these issues. We will be right back, I think, headed out of a commercial break right here.
We're going to be back in 90 seconds. We'll see you guys soon.
Critical race theory is the most racist thing that is being spread in popular life in America.
Critical race theory is bigoted. It is a lie.
Racism is now being taught to our kids.
Dividing kids based on race, trying to say some are oppressors and some are oppressed is absolutely unacceptable.
CRT is racist. It is abusive. It discriminates against one's color.
It's not critical race. It's racism.
Conservatives! POPlitics is now on TPUSA Live. It'll be here every day in case you want to hear me out along with the rest of the Turning Point USA team. Don't miss out on all the conservative.
You have to ask the question, how is the most heavily funded tribe have the poorest population?
Listen to me. My country is very because everything problem here. Don't have petroleum for bus and Cuban, for car, for drive, for nothing.
And it sucks. Socialism sucks. There's no other way you can describe it.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. We got Isabel, Alex, and Garrett. We got to talk about Condoleezza Rice's comments on. We're talking about The View again.
Again.
Shocking, right?
I feel like every day we just circle back. There, I say it. There you go. Now I'm Jen Psaki. Circle back to The View every day.
You did it.
Yeah, I'm bringing that up. I was like, I can't believe how much we're talking about The View on this show, but it's providing so much great content, so we got to keep it going. But Condoleezza Rice, the former Secretary of State, absolutely dismantled CRT. Check out what she had to say.
My parents never thought I was going to grow up in a world without prejudice, but they also told me that's somebody else's problem, not yours. You're going to overcome it, and you are going to be anything you want to be. And that's the message that I think we ought to be sending to kids. One of the worries that I have about the way that we're talking about race is that it either seems so big that somehow white people now have to feel guilty for everything that happened in the past. I don't think that's very productive. Or black people have to feel disempowered by race. I would like black kids to be completely empowered, to know that they are beautiful in their blackness, but in order to do that, I don't have to make white kids feel bad for being white. So somehow this is a conversation that has gone in the wrong direction.
Well, it seemed like on The View, too, they were not touching on CRT. They were trying to talk about this whole aspect, which we're going to get into, too, like co-parenting with the government. What role should parents be playing in their schooling? And it's just like, hey, before we get into any more of that, let me just absolutely just lambaste everybody and everything that is pushing CRT. And someone like that, it's almost shocking for everybody on The View to hear, because they're just like, oh, we weren't going to bring it up. And we probably didn't go over this in our pre-show meetings. And it's so effective, too, because you hear a just incredibly impactful woman like Condoleezza Rice say, like, I'm not teaching this to my kids. No kids in school should be learning this.
Well, and if you notice in that clip, when she is speaking about critical race theory, the audience is really on the edge of their seat. They are listening and they are applauding because the ideas that we are against as conservatives when it comes to critical race theory are not crazy. These are things that, even 5 years ago, I feel like the liberals would have agreed with us. And so we've now gone so radical that a lot of those people in the audience who would normally boo someone like Candace Owens were finding themselves agreeing with Condoleezza. And I think another thing about her too is her delivery is so kind and respectful. And so I think they were more likely to listen to her because she was really talking with them and she wasn't necessarily talking at them.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of people don't realize she did not come from the best area. And I used to work at a golf club in Birmingham, and she's a member of that club now, which is great for her. But our caddy master and her used to be neighbors. And so it just goes to show you put in hard work. There are no disadvantages.
I think what she does so successfully and impactfully in this interview is she's talking about the subject at large that they brought her on to speak about, co-parenting with the government, all of these parents showing up to school board meetings, expressing their disdain for what's happening in their district, but she ties it all back to the root cause that no one wants to admit, and that is critical race theory. That is this radical sex ed that has really taken over across the country, really all of this indoctrination that we're seeing, not just from public schools, but private schools as well for the next generation of Americans. She identifies the root cause of the problem and really wakes people up. There's this light bulb moment, I think, for everybody watching this episode and this interview to realize, wow, I didn't realize why I was upset, or I didn't realize why my neighbor has been going to every school board meeting for the last year, or why my kid is coming home and starting to say all of these really radical things that we're not talking about in our household. That was so incredible, and I think it really changed the minds of a lot of people who would otherwise probably consider themselves to be against conservatives in this debate.
I'm glad they let her talk too, because if you watch this whole clip, it's just less than 7 minutes or something like that. And she was talking about where she grew up too. It's like, hey, I grew up in segregated Birmingham, Alabama. But my parents were always telling me, it doesn't matter right now or later, you can be whatever you want to be. And to hear that from someone that grew up in segregation, it's like, hey, look at this now. We're in 2021, and I am telling you, as Condoleezza Rice, that any black person out there, you can be anybody you want to be. Any white person, you should not be feeling bad about what happened in the past. You can be whatever you want to be. It's all about just, you have a free choice, and you can either work hard or you can feel like you're oppressed and that everything's against you. It's up to you.
I love too, I was listening to the Charlie Kirk show yesterday, and he talked about going to Virginia where all that stuff is happening. And talked about how so many of the parents that showed up at his event and were talking to him that were now getting involved in the local school board meetings and stuff, he asked them, he said, are you conservative? Have you typically voted for conservatives in the past? And they said, no, I haven't, but now I see what this is and I don't want to be this. And so now I feel obligated to get involved because so many parents who moved to that, what is the county?
Loudoun County.
Yes, Loudoun
Virginia,
County.
yeah.
So many parents, I guess, that moved to this county, the whole poll for people in this county in Virginia is the school system. And so now the school system is being totally upended and ruined, and they're like, wait a minute, this is not what I moved here for. And so I thought that was powerful. Charlie saying, like, I talked to these parents. They're not typically people who would listen to the Charlie Kirk show, but they recognize this CRT is destroying our children.
Wow, that is so incredible to hear. And I think we have a unique opportunity right now with this particular issue to really unite Americans, which is ironic because it was under this presidential administration that they promised to unite the country over and over and over again, and yet the same policies
Build back better,
that they have always stood for to build our country back better, Brandon. I love that so much. Are actually dividing people more than ever before, yet we're seeing people like Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens, Condoleezza Rice, and many of the people we work with every day who are talking about this issue bring people together in an impactful way. But John, you said something so important just now that I want to make sure we touch on and we don't forget about. We grew up in several different generations here, but being told we could do whatever we wanted to do. And I think we did take that a little too far, maybe as a country. It created the participation trophy generation and an entitlement generation.
And all the people that went to school to get masters in basket weaving and butterfly catching or whatever.
But could you ever, growing up, any of us have imagined that we would arrive at a time in 2021 where we wouldn't be telling kids, you can do whatever you want to do when you grow up, you can be whoever you want to be if you're willing to work hard enough because of their skin color? I mean, that is just so flooring to me. based on how we grew up, always being told you can do anything, you can have anything, just work hard and it'll be yours. Now we are literally pointing at kids and saying, you look like that, good luck.
Well, that's why I'm so excited for our conversation in the next segment, talking to someone from Colorado State University. Because for me, I graduated in 2015. It was right before the big presidential election. I didn't have to deal with this hyper-politicized culture. I didn't have to have these crazy conversations about, race. I mean, obviously it was a topic of conversation when it needed to be, but it wasn't on the forefront of everybody's mind. You didn't have these prerequisites before you had a conversation with somebody. Tell me how you voted. What do you look like? Maybe I could talk to you then. Like, you're either a victim or you're oppressed or you're an oppressor. And it's so sad to me because we can't even have discussions anymore. So luckily we have parents and leaders like Condoleezza Rice that are saying, hey, for me as a parent now too, this is what I'm telling my kids. This is what I'm telling the next generation. That's why I feel like this next video is so impactful too, because before she says this statement, you have someone like Joy Behar that's saying like, well, basically parents, like, just let the pros do it. Let the people in positions of power at school do whatever they want to do. And it's like,
yeah, she knows what's best.
Yeah, of course. Joy Behar knows what's best. But this is Condoleezza Rice's reaction to that.
First of all, parents ought to be involved in their children's education. Their children are in school 7 hours. That's a very formative period. And I think parents ought to have a say. We used to have parent-teacher conferences. We used to have PTAs. There are lots of ways for parents to be involved, and they should be.
And I think right now, too, there was a hearing this morning with Attorney General Garland. What is happening right now trying to vilify parents for pushing back against these critical theories is 100% political. No doubt about it. This is happening right now for a reason, because they want to take over the next generation. They want to indoctrinate the next generation. They want them to feel like the government's going to take care of them. Your parents aren't going to take care of you. Don't listen to what they have to say. We'll take care of you. And it's just so divisive, and it's not going to help out the next generation whatsoever.
He called these parents domestic terrorists.
Yeah, it's not even just vilifying them. I mean,
what? I mean, and that's the thing. We were talking about this earlier, is that I wish as a nation we would learn how to not get so bogged down in the details, who's right, who's wrong. Just look at these situations from a bird's eye view. These parents are getting called domestic terrorists when they're essentially challenging an issue brought to the table by the school board, which is normal. Domestic terrorism. That just, I will never get over that. That is such a big issue to me.
All because they want their kids to be learning actual lessons that will help set them up for success in life and be safe at school.
Well, that's what's been happening, like, probably especially the past few years. It's like, if you wear a mask, you're saving people. If you don't, you're killing people. If you get vaccinated, you're saving people. If you don't get vaccinated, you're killing people. It's just total extremes here. If you're pushing back on what this school board or the school system is trying to do, you're the villain. You're not just a villain, you're one of the worst. You're a domestic terrorist. But I think that's why it's so important that we have Charlie Kirk exposing critical racism tour, like you were bringing up. He's going to places like Vermont, he's going to other places across the country that really don't have conservative leanings, and they don't align.
And I think too is that it's really important to recognize that this is beyond canceling now. We are unpersoning people. No ability to participate in society, period. You can't stand up to protect your kids. You can't shop at certain places. You can't go to certain places. And so it's beyond just like you're losing your job. You can't even participate in society. That is terrifying.
Yeah, Charlie had this attendee at one of his Exposing Critical Racism tour events, and this is what he had to say.
People, I mean, life hits so good, that's why you take it for granted, because privilege is invisible for those who have it. So wake up every day, your fridge have food and everything, you have electricity, you can go to school. Where I come from, I didn't have that chance. I have to work like 15 miles every day to go to school, to know how to read. But you have PlayStation and Xbox, but you are complaining every day, and you are BLM, you are Antifa, and all that BS. So, I mean, what is your take on that?
And so this goes back to my opening remarks, which is you've lived a tough life and now you have it better. Every day you wake up thankful. And that is the core bedrock, isn't it? That's the difference. Is that people that are not thankful to live in this country, they scoff at this. They say, human suffering is my Netflix not loading fast enough. My Uber Eats not getting there in time. You know what difficulty is. And you all.
That's why it's so important too. You have someone, a Haitian migrant, that's saying, hey, I traveled 15 miles to go to school. And I don't know if any of you or anybody watching has really gone overseas, seen a place like Haiti, or I know I've been to Kenya and places like that. Like, people are traveling just almost 20 miles just to get water. And he brings up, hey, there is not some sort of white privilege here. There's an American privilege. The fact that you get to live in a free country like this, and someone like that, that's always fascinating when we're talking to people that migrated here legally and said, what are you doing? You're literally just giving up your rights right now, and you have no idea how good you have it.
Yeah, it's kind of, you know your country's great when you have to manufacture reasons as to why it's not great.
Yes.
And it's almost like people, again, they don't appreciate what they have, and it's almost like they're so bored and need struggle, they create their own struggle by saying that, you know, we're a racist country and that capitalism is bad. And I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
In America, I don't think we have a privilege problem. I think we have a gratitude problem. And I think Dennis Prager really puts this best above all else in the conservative movement. He says that gratitude is the key to happiness. It's the foundation of how you achieve joy in your life. We aren't taught to be grateful for anything. We're taught to receive instant gratification for absolutely anything under the sun that we ask for. Everything is digital. Everything's deliverable. Heck, you don't even have to wait 2 days on Amazon anymore. You just get it in like 4 hours as soon as you order anything. You don't have to interact with anyone. You don't have to go take care of yourself. You can always rely on someone else or something else, and our society will just give it to you. How that breeds gratitude is beyond me, and I think what we're seeing right now with Gen Z coming into adulthood is a severe lack of gratitude in our society. That's why we're manufacturing all of these issues. We see people more upset with the misuse of pronouns than the fact that hundreds of thousands of people in our country are dealing with housing shortages or food shortages or this supply chain crisis that's going to impact an unbelievable amount of people who are living in poverty in our country. That is something that we should be talking about, is this gratitude problem in our country, not this idea of privilege based on the content of melanin in your skin.
Well, I'll give you the final take here, because it seems like in leadership too, it's like, how dare you push back on our leadership? How dare you question what we have to say and the way we're going about things?
I think we need to recognize that it is at that point, and so we have to make that choice. Like 100%, if we speak up, we're going to be punished in some way, shape, or form. We have to decide for ourselves and our families if that is worth it. We've all had to give up something, forfeit something, whether that's friendships or a job or whatever at this point as a conservative. And I always tell people, I don't want to lie to you. It's not going to get easier. It is tough to be an out and proud conservative, but it is worth it. It is worth it for the future of this country.
Yeah, for just a little bit to be uncomfortable, so you can be doing this for the next generation, for our kids, for everybody that's coming up in these school systems. It's going to be extremely uncomfortable. It's been uncomfortable for a lot of us. Some of us have been canceled. Some of us out here, like the conversation we're about to have with a student activist from Colorado State University, it's extremely uncomfortable because you are totally going against the grain. You're going against leadership, but this is what's right. This is the truth, and we're always going to tell you that here, and that's why we're excited about this next conversation here about a student that was threatened with arrest for pushing back on vaccine mandates. See you in 90 seconds.
This has all happened before. The riots, violence, church burning, attacks on police, destruction of private property.
My name is Sammy Steigman. I am a Holocaust survivor.
This is the reality of what happens when you have capitalism that goes to socialism.
El socialismo no funciona. El socialismo no funciona.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. We're at TPUSA HQ in Phoenix, Arizona, and we got a student activist from Colorado State University, Gabby Reichardt. So you wrote an article about this on the live feed, so I kind of want you to run this a little bit too. I might just sit back and ask a few questions here, but your story is incredible, Isabel.
Absolutely. So I'm a CSU grad myself, John. I graduated in 2019 from Colorado State University and literally wrote the book on how bad my leftist indoctrination experience
Feels
was
like your protege right
at
here.
CSU. So I actually know Gabby. I've known you for a while because we were involved in the Turning Point USA chapter there on campus together. And Gabby is great friends with my sister Gabby as well, which is super fun. But I came across your story because you sent me a text a few weeks ago talking about how the university has been mandating vaccines. It's really crazy. You can get exemptions, but it's really difficult to get an exemption. And even once you do, you have to deal with all kinds of crazy requirements. And some students are now banned entirely from a public university campus for failing to put up with these insane guidelines. Tell us more about what that looks like for you.
Yeah, so honestly, last year when they had testing in place for us, like actual COVID testing, now it's COVID screening that they want us to do twice a week, saliva screening. They sent us emails that it was required and that like I didn't go one time last year because I never came to school sick. I know my health. I don't need to prove my health to the school to go to my classes that I'm paying for. And then this year comes around, we're over 80% vaccinated, especially by students, and they still want non-vaccinated students to screen not once a week but twice a week for COVID. So not only are we being set apart and they want us to, screen outside in the open air, it's in the basketball stadium parking lot on one side of campus, and then right outside the Student Center Plaza, they have a storage unit that they think they're blocking it with, but they're not, for the, kind of main campus portion of it. And I think that's just, I said this on Charlie's show, I think it's a mark of shame. I think it's really unfair that they're doing that. There's no privacy involved in the fact that they're testing outside in open air in front of everybody else. And I've kind of just gone about my life. I ignored the school and they emailed me that they were going to send my name to student conduct. I said, do it. And then I ignored some more emails. I ignored some more strongly worded emails. And then I got trespassed from my own public campus. And it's a very nice way of saying that I am banned from my public campus that I'm paying money to go to because I didn't want to prove my health twice a week to be there. I've never shown up to school sick with anything. The vaccinated students can still get COVID and spread COVID on campus, but that doesn't matter. And if the vaccinated faculty or staff or student still get contact traced from someone who did have COVID, they still have to quarantine. So there's that also.
So basically they're just putting a scarlet letter on you is what you're saying, which is crazy.
It's just, Candace Owens said it best, I don't like things that are stupid.
I don't like things that are stupid. We love to hear that. So, Gabby, obviously I know this because I attended school, but this is a public campus in the state of Colorado. It's actually a federally funded public campus as well, so a lot of this is federal public property. Quite literally anybody could walk onto your college campus, a homeless person, an illegal immigrant. Nobody has to prove who they are, show an ID. They certainly don't have to prove their COVID status or their vaccination status, but you, a tuition-paying student, are now forbidden to go to any of your classes or show up on university property because of this situation?
Absolutely, and I know I was talking to you about this, but our university president, Joyce McConnell, tested positive for COVID the week after we all got banned from campus. She sent us a long, drawn-out email telling us about her medical information that I never asked for, that nobody cares about, but she was like, I'm so sad I'm missing homecoming festivities, and I'm like, so you can just, get whatever. So,
and she can spread COVID all over campus as a vaccinated individual, but there's no rules for her.
No, and I've never come to school even a little bit sick, and none of us really have, and it's just, I'm a huge fan of personal responsibility of like, I know I'm healthy, I know I can go to class, and I'm paying for them at this public university, so I should be able to go to class. And it's just disastrous. I think it's a mess, and I think students of all political leanings think it's not great either.
That would be my follow-up question, would be what are the other students thinking? Because right now too, we just had a segment talking about like how difficult it must be being on a college campus right now, because you are unbelievably courageous. There's times where I look back, I'm like, I wonder if I would have been that courageous. So believe it when I say it, a lot of us, the contributors, everybody at TPUSA HQ, when we look at people like you, we're like, this is incredible. You're standing up, but what are the other students saying? Do they have your back? Are they starting to get red pill? What's the deal?
Right. I think, and because Miss Ma'am here wrote the book on our campus and everything that goes on there.
There's been a microscope on CSU for a while.
They've been watching me. They know who I am. They know I'm the president of the chapter. They totally know what's going on here. I've received a lot of support, especially after the first news hits I did, from professors, from students, the conversations we've had tabling on the plaza. about, do you believe that the government should be able to hold a metaphorical gun to your head to make you do something you don't want to do? They, come around to being like, well, no, not really. That's a little extreme. I was like, so do you think we should be arrested for being on campus? And they're like, that's also a little extreme. So it's not really a political thing as far as people from all political leanings, professors and students alike, think that it's just completely asinine what's going on. And I said this this morning with Charlie, is that no one was brave enough to just say, no, I'm not going to do that. Because we emailed them back and said, we're not going to do this. And they said, okay, your trespass has been lifted. So it's been a huge success.
How do you feel like this is impacting medical privacy for young adults on campus?
Yeah, that too. I've actually, one of my members brought it up to me. And, if you read the fine print of the agreements, the little tiny bullet points right before you sign, as they were like, there may be issues with privacy or concerns about privacy, I think is what it says. And so that was one of the first students to email them was like, hey, I don't feel comfortable making my medical information, my educational information for you to just have access to. And they're like, oh yeah, whatever. And it's because they're banking on the fact that students don't know their rights.
Wow.
When you know your rights and you tell them, no, I'm not going to do this, this is wrong, then they're like, okay, because they will take and take and take until you tell them no more.
Well, it seems like now, like everyone's on social media, and then you always have like a new iOS update or something. So it's just like terms and conditions. It's so long. It's kind of like a lot of these bills that they're trying to throw out there in Washington. It's like 3,000 pages.
As long as the Bible.
Like,
Yeah.
no one's gonna read it. And then now too, I know it's always an interesting discussion about like even just signing up for college. Is it the right idea? And thinking about all the hoops that you have to jump through. You got to sign this, sign that, and it's expensive. And they're starting to indoctrinate you. Is this worth it? You have to be taking it online, and you have to pay even more to take it online. But what do you think the next step is here, and what do you tell students that hear a story like this and think maybe, is college the right idea? Is CSU the right idea? What do you say?
Yeah, well, I'm very against like going to college for the sake of going to college. I have a dance degree, so I know all about majors that don't matter and jobs that don't exist. And so I really urge people to think twice about it. If you're going to go to college, do your years at community college if you can, or get a STEM degree or anything like that. But it really breaks my heart what's going on my campus. CSU was an agricultural school not very long ago. So the fact that this is happening in what I used to call like Cowtown, Colorado, and I love being home for college. I didn't want to leave. I wasn't ready to leave Colorado. It really makes me sad what's happening to my school, but not only my state. And so as far as students who are dealing with something similar, the solution to the problem might be closer than you think, and that's just to email them directly, talk to them directly, say, no, like, I don't feel comfortable, I know my rights, I'm not going to do this, because they know what they're doing is wrong, but they're also not going to get sued and have to go through that legal battle, because we haven't even gotten to that point yet. We're just like, hey, like, I don't want to do this, this is wrong, and they're like, oh, okay. So I think it's really encouraging for students that they hold more power than they think.
Gabby, you and I were both really surprised, I think, and blindsided by the fact that the traditionally more conservative school in our state turned out to be leftist insanity. Marxism threw up all over our campus everywhere. Are you surprised now that your school is taking such draconian measures for COVID-19, given your experience on campus?
No, definitely not. And I know you know all about this, but Joyce McConnell created the pandemic preparedness team that is working in tandem with the Student Resolution Center, who are giving them telling them these students aren't vaccinated and they're not testing. You need to reach out to them and follow up with them as to why. She's the one who created all of these programs, and she has given no comment about it whatsoever. So the fact that she tested positive and just has let this go under the rug is completely unacceptable.
As the leadership of the university,
Absolutely.
There is the school president. Let's say this takes a turn for the worst and your school keeps going after you, and God forbid they arrest you on your public school campus for showing up to a class you're paying tuition for. What's next for you?
Well, first of all, I hope at least someone puts it on Barstool and that I look good in my mugshot. But after
That's courage right there, people.
But after that, we'll do some follow-up. We have some people in our corner. We've have some issues. We're kind of get lawyers in the wings, not officially taking legal action, but trying to talk to people in Colorado, and conservative lawyers in Colorado who think they want to fight it are just like, no, you should just comply. And that's the problem with the state turning so blue, is even people who are conservative for the state are not ready to make a case as to why the school should not be able to force us to take something that we don't want to, or else you have to test, or else you get arrested. So that would be next steps, but I'm really optimistic about not having to go there currently. I don't know. CSU always surprises me, like you said.
Well, you're not backing down, and we love to see that.
Yeah, we always appreciate that, not complying, holding the line. And I hope there's a lot of students that hear your story and are inspired. And I hope if El Presidente, Dave Portnoy, is listening, if
He's
it comes
in
to
Denver
it,
today.
share that mugshot.
Come by Cowtown,
Real
Dave.
Dealer Fake News coming up next. See you soon.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
Conservatives! POPlitics is now on TPUSA Live. It'll be here every day in case you want to hear me out along with the rest of the Turning Point USA team. Don't miss out on all the conservative.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. I can't believe I didn't get the boot memo here, ladies. Thanks for letting me know. And then you guys got these camo boots over here too, kind of like stylish. And
They texted me right before.
He was
How was I not in that group text?
Sorry, man. Gotta make the cut. I don't know what else to say.
We got Gabby, Garrett, and Isabel. We're going to play Real Deal or Fake News. It's tough right now because we live in a world of fake news.
Everything's
fake. Is it Babylon Bee or is this legit? You guys are going to have to decide, and you're going to have to decide at home too. We're going to start with this one. This one's about, here we go. This one's about Harvard. This first one.
Everything could be
so
true,
Harvard trained the people overseeing China's genocide camps.
Oh gosh.
Is that real deal or fake news? Gabby, we're going to start with you.
I want to say it's fake. I want to believe that it's not real. We'll see.
You're going fake. It's
back
always
to me. I need to
I was going to think about it.
I'm going real.
You're going real?
I'm going
Oh
real.
boy.
Come on.
I'm inclined to say fake, but I also wouldn't be surprised
Right.
if it was real.
What's your final answer?
Fake.
You're going fake? Let's see if they're right. It is actually a real news story. So Harvard trained the people overseeing China's genocide camps.
I'm so glad I never went to school.
That's why we live in a crazy world right now. So you have no idea what's real and what's fake, especially when you just hear a headline like that.
This is why news is broken, because everybody reads a headline and they're like, oh, I know the whole story now. I have to know the whole story now. Like, how did they train the...
What did they
That
train
is
them?
from the Daily Caller, so go there, read the whole story. It is absolutely shocking.
As soon as we're done
You
here, I'm gonna run upstairs.
It's bothering me.
I gotta read that article.
Guess we're Yale fans
Yeah,
now.
apparently.
This next one is about Marvel. Let's check this one out. So Marvel to reboot Captain America as Captain Globalism.
There's no way.
So we know that Superman's son, the new Superman, is now bisexual. I don't know why I said it like that, but it's weird, and I'll say it weird. All right.
Although apparently that doesn't exist now. If you ask Gen Zers, they'll say bisexual is not a thing anymore. It's pansexual, because bisexual exists within the binary
Of two genders.
of only two genders, and there's more than that.
Can we start getting a newsletter about this stuff? So if there's updates about the pronouns and the genders and everything.
Somebody call the council. We must know.
No, with all these genders now, it will start looking like a CVS receipt. It's so
the
long,
alphabet
it's out of
super
control.
council.
I don't know.
But this one, once again, to Marvel to reboot Captain America as Captain Globalism. Is this real deal or fake news?
Oh man, I'm gonna say real.
Again?
I'm gonna say real.
Say real.
Things are so crazy.
Real deal or
It's
fake
fake.
news?
They won't mess
Captain
with Cap.
Globalism?
It's fake.
Definitely
Token
fake.
nerd at the table knows
Yeah,
it's
also
fake.
that too. I love Marvel way too much. I heard about this.
All right, let's see who's correct. So this is Babylon Bee. So he's not being rebooted as Captain Globalism. But did
You know, the Babylon Bee has been very successful in predicting things several months in advance, so maybe it will come true. I don't know.
It's prophetic. It's like the Old, the New Testament, and Babylon Bee.
Book of Mormon needs to tack that on in their musical.
Someone from Marvel read that headline. They're like, you know what? That's actually a good idea.
They were like, we recasted him as a different race.
Yeah, some
Let's just
intern
tack
over
this
there
on.
at Marvel Studios. So just hear me out. Captain Globalism.
Any takers?
Black Widow didn't really get a good response,
Yeah,
but we
good
come out with
point.
Captain Globalism. Sales could be going to the moon. This next one is about vaccinations. You know about those.
Oh, yeah.
All right, vaccinated man just wishes there was something that could protect him from COVID. Real deal or fake news? Gabby, we'll start with you, especially after that discussion we
If it's a real headline, I want to say the headline is real, but it also sounds like a Babylon Bee headline. No, it's fake. I have to say it's fake.
You're going fake?
Real.
You're saying real.
I'm saying real. I'm sticking with real.
Once again, vaccinated man just wishes there was something that could protect him from COVID.
This sounds like the headline
This sounds
where
like
they
the
were
bee.
like,
I'm going fake.
vaccinated man dies, but it could have been worse, which was a real headline. So I'm sticking with this. It's real. It's real.
What was that from?
It was a real headline. It was like, vaccinated man in his 70s dies from COVID, but family says it could have been worse or something. And I'm like, how could it have been worse? He died.
he's literally 6 feet under.
It's bad.
He's dead. I don't think
it gets any worse.
Let's find out who's right. So it's the Babylon Bee once again. I love this photo too. Just like,
oh no.
Just it looks just like a typical, just like lefty over there too. It's just like.
I think that's what Joyce McConnell looks like when she had COVID.
Yeah, maybe. Looking out the window, your university president.
The office that we're paying tuition dollars for her to work in.
I love
some guy that's just working from home. Like, man, I wish there was something. I mean, I've been watching CNN all day, and they're not telling me. There's got to be something to fight back. But this next one is about a man going viral. Man goes viral for his insanely realistic and graphic Halloween decorations.
I think it's real.
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 We're all going real. Why?
Because it feels like a trick question now.
Explain yourself, Gabby.
I mean, it just doesn't seem like China genocide, so this seems like an easy one to say that it's real.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. I don't know. I want to see the photo.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I want to know what they're talking about.
That seems to me like it could be a realistic thing that actually happened.
The real question is that the guy put out Halloween decorations and he's safe after Dr. Anthony Fauci said we probably can't celebrate any holidays this year.
You know, I think we should just all dress as Fauci for Halloween, honestly, because I'm so tired of this man, but everything he's saying is way scarier to me than anything from Halloween.
Do AOC at the border
Not that I'm going to
wall.
listen, but I'm just saying, it's a little freaky, New World Order type stuff.
but you guys are all going with real deal.
Real deal.
This is a
Real
real
deal.
story?
Yeah.
Let's see if you're right. So it is a real story. So that's from the
Whoa.
Daily Caller. Look at that. Oh
Whoa.
my.
What is that? Like a
hot
blood
dogs?
geyser? I'm so confused.
I need to call this guy.
A blood geyser.
That's what it looks like.
It does look like a
I'm
blood
the weird
geyser.
science girl,
what's
okay?
the
That's what
substance?
it appears to be.
Also, I just don't understand people's infatuation with making just these graphic, gory
I like
Halloween things. It's so weird to me. Like everyone's just like, yes, the skeletons. They're coming out of the closet.
They do it to
Skeletons
bug
aren't
you.
gory.
They're weird though. It's just weird stuff.
Have you seen Spooky Scary Skeletons? Great audio.
Okay,
haven't
I'm
seen
the
it.
first to admit I'm not into like the whole haunted house thing. I just don't understand like horror movies, haunted houses. I don't understand why you would
like a good horror
voluntarily
movie, though.
subject
It's an
yourself
adrenaline junkie thing.
to be miserable. But like I'm an actual adrenaline junkie. Like jump out of a plane, I'll do it. Whitewater raft the Zambezi River, I've done that. Like I'll do all of those things. I don't understand horror movie culture, but I will say blood and guts for Halloween, it totally fits. Maybe it's because I wanted to be a trauma surgeon and I don't get freaked out by
You should
that
take
in
her
particular.
opinion with a
but-
grain of salt.
Also,
Truth comes out.
if this man is still married, what does his wife think?
Maybe she
Oh,
thinks
honey,
it's
I just
cool.
can't wait for you to put the bloody, gory
If
limbs
this was
out in the
Alex
yard
Clark's
again this
house,
year.
I would totally buy it. It will be her house in a few more
But at
years.
least when you say spoopy, it doesn't sound like that
She
scary.
is so into like true crime, blood and guts. Like you, there's a dark side there. Trust me, I see it as her
Well, if
best
you want to see
friend.
that dark side, tune into the spillover. with
Spoopy.
But this next one is about climate change. VP Harris loves that. Support for climate change skyrockets after computer models show it will flood California.
That's got to be real.
Real. I'm going with real.
Real.
Pretty quick, too.
Universal.
Garrett, explain yourself.
I don't know, man. It's just wait. It's
I just know.
California, so it's pretty out there. But sorry, Californians. But
I don't consider
again, it's
myself
just-
a Californian anymore.
It's one of those things that's like it's so outrageous, it has to be true. That's where my headspace is right now.
Yeah, and I feel like also people have this big bleeding heart for, we have to take care of California, particularly on the left. It's a very common talking point. I say we just push them off into the ocean, perhaps, but
Okay.
sorry, Californians, again. I grew up in Colorado. It's a really extreme cultural animosity you don't understand. But
We got
I
big
think
rocks.
this could easily be real, easily.
Before we push them off into the ocean, I would like to get my parents out first.
Okay,
so
that's
once
fine.
we get them out,
we're not
can
going to
just-
sacrifice the
refugees. I'm not.
conservatives.
Yeah. Just let it go. It's destined to go.
$5 gas prices
But
can
once
go.
again, it's support for climate change skyrockets after computer models show it will flood California. They're all going fake news?
No,
real
we're all
deal?
going
Real.
real deal.
Real news.
My goodness. They're all going real, are they right?
No,
it is fake.
Dang it.
I was
That is fake.
Florida.
All right,
I
well,
swear
here's
they're
what
always telling
will
me.
give you a really strong opinion on California. My coworker upstairs, who just came to us this summer from Hollywood and her crazy leftist job, told me today that gas prices are over $7.50 a gallon in Los Angeles right now, and in some places they're
Seriously?
approaching $8 a gallon in LA today.
Sounds
Today.
like 1% prices to me.
$8 a gallon.
It's nuts.
You better tell your parents to move now, because I think it's really escalating.
You know how much money you could save with like
Build back better.
Build back better, boys. Let's go,
Let's
Brandon.
go, Brandon.
this is decency in the White House, you guys.
Unbelievable. Yeah, luckily my parents are actually coming out this weekend.
There you go.
So might just have to just really keep
Plant
them
the
here.
seed. Yeah, just say it's time to stay.
You got to stay. You're here now. You got to stay. This next one is about hospital ERs. Let's check it out. Hospital closes ER, urgent care, after nurses go on strike.
True.
I hope it's real.
Real.
Real deal.
Real deal?
Real deal.
Yeah.
We talked about this extensively. All going real. Let's see if they're right. It is real.
Real deal.
That wasn't, so we thought we'd give you guys a softball question there.
Oh, we love that.
First one was hard.
But we're
Was a
seeing
little
that all across the country right now too. I know we were covering some places in Minnesota where they were saying, hey, you're getting rid of all these unvaccinated healthcare workers that for just a couple months ago, it seemed like they were heroes, and then now they're villains. They're the worst. And then they're getting overrun. They're told they need to work 24/7, and they're just like, enough's enough. I need to get paid more, and if we're not going to get the help we need to get compensated for
This
it.
is how you stand up to these mandates. So, you know, the guy I work for, as we talked about earlier a little bit, the school system his son was going to, his son's 6, has asthma, was being forced to wear a mask, even with asthma.
Wow.
And he couldn't, he's like, no, I'm going to take him out of school then. If you're going to make him wear a mask, I'm going to take him out of school. Well, there was, 10 to 15 families that also followed suit. And so now the school says, okay, we're lifting the mask mandate. Will y'all come back? And they're like, no. But that's how you fight. You
Yep,
can't
you
just
have to be
give
willing to walk
in. You
away.
have to fight it.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember seeing this TikTok that totally blew up when all of this was first happening, of a nurse who didn't want to become vaccinated. I think the reason was she was trying to get pregnant with her significant other or something. And she makes this TikTok talking about her experience as a nurse, and she's taking off her stethoscope and she's taking off her badge and all of her other medical equipment, all the way down just to her regular scrubs. And she says in the post copy, in the comments there, I'm going to come back. Like, I will come back. I will fight this. I'll keep doing what I love and what I'm passionate about. But like, I have to stand up for this right now. And it was very, very powerful. Millions of people saw that on TikTok. It was really cool.
Because we need to see those stories too, and that's why we appreciate you sharing your story too, because all these healthcare workers, students like you dealing with this kind of crap on campus, we got first responders, and you need to film this stuff. Like, that's why I appreciate too when we had that leaked audio about a military medic saying, hey, I know you're 6 days away from retiring from the military, but you need to get this vaccine now. Normally I would tell you, like, you got a few months.
Yeah.
But now it's just like, you need to share these stories, you need to film this stuff. As much as I don't follow TikTok at all, it seems like we got some good TikToks. We also got some weird TikToks we always share on What in the World Wednesday. But this next one is about the IRS. Let's see how you guys do. So IRS agents bust 7-year-old for getting more than $600 worth of birthday presents.
I hope it's fake. I really do.
It's fake for now. For now.
Real deal or fake news? What are you going with?
That's fake for now.
You going fake?
Fake.
Fake news. I have to hope, at least.
Fake.
Going fake. Once again, IRS agents bust 7-year-old for getting more than $600 worth of birthday presents. Let's see if they're right. Is it fake?
Oh, thank
It's
goodness.
fake. The IRS agent.
That's a funny joke. Crazy.
And then we got a final one too. So we've all been following the Gabby Petito case. Quite a bit. I know you have, and obviously they're following it on the spillover quite a bit too with Alex Clark. But final real deal or fake news is Brian Laundrie dead?
I don't know if they released that yet. Yes.
You're going
that,
real
that,
deal?
that was He's not dead. His remains.
You're saying
There's no
fake
way.
news?
Yeah, fake news.
His remains are
That's just my opinion.
Whose remains
but
are they?
Allegedly. I like that word. My parents are lawyers, okay? I was raised very specifically with the right words to use. Allegedly, he's not dead.
Real deal or fake news?
I think fake news. I think his parents. I think his.
That's a good point.
So the correct answer is real deal. So we talked about it yesterday in the show.
Did they release the report today?
So they released the report
Good.
today, actually, that the remains found are of Brian Laundrie.
Wow.
So that's
okay,
what
but have they confirmed what the remains are? I'm very curious to
So
hear.
we actually, I'm hearing from our producers right now that we had information that just came out that those remains have been confirmed that they are Brian Laundrie's.
Interesting. Well,
then
what's
also-
disappointing is there's not going to be real justice then, which is just tough for her family, and my heart just really goes out to them. So our
Yeah.
prayers are with the Petito family for sure. But what an insane case that's really captivated the heart of the nation. For a
Yeah, and
long
I'm being
time.
told right now too, so dental records are showing that it actually confirms that it's Brian Laundrie. And it's so strange to me too. I know we're about to go to commercial break in about 30 seconds, but how his parents help out with the search, and then all of a sudden we find these remains, we find items and everything. So it all seems so strange, but I think it should come back to the Petito family. We're looking for justice for Gabby, and I hope that information comes out that she gets the justice she deserves, and that her parents and the entire Petito family gets the peace that they rightfully
Absolutely.
deserve. Yeah,
exactly.
But we are going to be back in 3 minutes, not 90 seconds this time, for one last thing. So Trump's got a brand new media company. We're going to talk about it. See you soon.
In these United States of America, this great country of ours, we American Indians, we can be anything we want to be, except American Indians.
A lot of the soldiers were very aggressive, so the women did get raped.
What we call huerte. Huerte means a place of suffering, dying, starvation, nothing good. Just like Nazi concentration camps.
I didn't realize how corrupt things were. I didn't realize what kind of environment we were living in.
We had no running water, we had no power.
They de-incentivize people from, opportunity.
That's why our suicide rate has climbed up astronomical rates.
I moved from the poorest county in America, the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, to the richest area in the country, the Navajo Indian Reservation. There is no difference. The poorest and richest reservations in our nation suffer from identical problems. This is not anything new. This is an everyday occurrence in all tribal governments.
So my life and my tale and my truth has been to fight socialism. And I'm hoping that I can wake up as many Navajos as I can to tell them that you can do this. Yeah, even if I have to fight you to save you. And I think that's what I'm also projecting to my people. Even though they are so harsh on social media and they completely hammer at me, I tell them, I'll be here even if I have to fight you to save you.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. We got the whole gang here now. Look at this.
love it.
We got Alex Clark, we got Gabby, Garrett, Isabel. One last thing. So there's been so much censorship on social media, so much talk about just different platforms, like we got Getter, Parler, so many different things coming up. And then we've been hearing rumors for a long time that former President Trump was going to be building some sort of media company, and he announced yesterday building the Trump Media and Technology Group, which is going to include a social media platform called Truth. And Lord knows we need some more of that, Alex Clark.
We do need more of that, but can I just say an unpopular opinion? As much as I love former
Not
President
on the show,
Trump,
no. I'm just kidding.
as much as I love former President Trump, I think this is a mistake. I think that conservatives joining conservative-only social media networks is a mistake. We're putting ourselves in an echo chamber. Who are we reaching? Whose minds are we changing? Nobody's. Now, of course, it's getting harder and harder to share those opinions because we're getting drowned out and canceled and, censored. But I think we should fight back as much as we can and try to stay on these popular media outlets for as long as we can.
Because honestly, I'm along the same lines as you. Because sometimes it's just like, oh, this isn't working out. Maybe it's not worth the fight. Let's just start something different.
I wish he would have gone the media company route of having, starting up a media company, like an app where you have shows and different things like that people could watch.
Oh, that might be part of it. We don't know, right? Yeah. So my biggest hope for all of this, obviously we don't know much about Truth Social. It's kind of shrouded in secrecy for the moment, but I just hope that they're trying to reinvent the wheel. They're trying to do something different. We can't have a Twitter 2.0 or a Facebook 2.0 or an Instagram 2.0. Look at what made TikTok, for example, so successful. They did something that has never been done before, and people immediately latched onto that as the next big thing, the new cool thing. The same thing could be said for Snapchat when we were in high school or any other app that was fresh and new on the scene. So I just hope they try to do something unique and fun that's never been done before.
She said Snapchat when she was in high school.
Yeah, that became big when I was in high school. Instagram was my freshman year of high school when that came out. I was like,
I'm feeling very old. Okay, sorry.
I'm the oldest
I feel like an absolute geezer right now. Because I was about to say, I hope if it's anything like MySpace, I'm in.
Oh, there you go. Maybe he's resurrecting
I never got MySpace. It was already a joke by the time I was old enough. No, not kidding. It was a
Wait.
the whole time.
Imagine this. Truth social media. They resurrect Tom.
Oh, yes.
Tom from
MySpace
MySpace. Tom from MySpace has been MIA. We haven't heard anything from him. Maybe he is a
We did hear when
conservative.
Facebook shut down for a hot minute. He basically just said,
Oh, he did.
I didn't know that.
Hello, I didn't know that before.
just like, he said, "Good morning. It wasn't me." It was great. It was an awesome tweet. Resurrect
More to investigate.
Tom from MySpace.
Tom and Trump partner up. We need it.
Wow.
God, make profile music great again.
See, that would be cool.
Yes.
They have to do something
Man.
different or something that just isn't happening on the scene right now. So I'd be okay with resurrecting some of the old ideas too.
Yeah, let's not use the songs I used back in the day.
I'd love to have a top. I want the top 8 back so that I can let people know where they stand with me. On
That makes me really nervous as one of your close friends. I don't know how I
want
would
to be
feel
able to
about
watch
that.
your snap score go up and down again. Let's bring that back.
That reminds one of my favorite comedies. The other guys, he's like, "No, I'll tell you straight to your face. I don't like you." That's what it seems like. The top 8 is like, "No, I'm not a fan of you." But as a college student right now, we'd love to know, what would you want in a social media platform that would attract you?
I think, and what I've learned in my garbage journalism classes is like the less clicks there are on like a website or an app or anything you use day to day, the more likely people are to use it. Because think like TikTok is literally just scrolling. Like that's all there is to it. And I think that's part of why, like, especially over quarantine when we were all like brain dead and like not doing anything productive, is it was so easy to get addicted to. So I think something that's user friendly, that makes sense, that's similar enough to the other platforms that they can figure it out, but also, like you guys said, it's something new. So
I like that.
Yeah, I think it's exciting too, because they're saying that there's invited guests right now to check out the beta version. Have you gotten an invite yet?
I have not, so maybe
Neither
they
have
heard.
we, so it's okay.
Maybe they heard that I was interested. I definitely
Definitely
won't
not
have shot now.
My agent says mine's in the mail. So.
There you go.
We need to talk to Charlie Kirk too. I'm sure they've reached
Oh,
out
Charlie
to him.
knows something. He knows everything.
He won't tell us. There's no way.
Yeah, he won't tell us. He's sworn to secrecy. He keeps a lot of secrets for the Trump family.
I would be curious if Charlie is actually going to download this app onto his phone, because
That's
he
the
doesn't
question.
have any other social media apps on his phone. So I feel like if he does, it'll be a great success.
We need to talk to Charlie. If this is another TikTok thing,
it is. It
good lord.
Well, wait,
Yeah,
they
it
bring
is.
it back to
Well, it's Borat, but
That's what I
it's
know.
audio on TikTok. The fact that had to be
people know what it
explained, boomer, that
Sad.
was bad.
I do feel like a boomer at times too. It's like, give me a break. I
brutal.
turned the big 3-0 on Monday. All right, I'm really getting up there.
Exciting!
I'm getting
So
up.
exciting!
I am becoming a boomer. All right, that's why I have so many dad jokes on this program, dude. Nice one, John, for sure. But this has been such a fun show, and I can't wait for the new Truth Social. I don't think I'm going to get an invite, but early next year, I get to be a part of it like the rest of you. But coming up next, we got debate night and Benny on the Block. And don't forget, we just announced our speaker list, our first speaker list for America Fest.
Yes.
It's going to be lit, as the kids would say. Go to tpusa.com/amfest. But thanks again for coming. We will see you guys tomorrow.
Good.
I'm a Bernie Sanders would be a good start guy. But
as being a Democrat socialist, do you support closed borders and strict immigration?
No, I don't, and I'll tell you why.
So you say you don't trust the government, yet you support expanding the social services, which will then necessarily expand government. Why do you want to expand something you don't trust? That's all the. Let's talk about that.
Well, okay, but those are places.
That's a different thing.
What is your favorite Joe Biden accomplishment so far?
I have to think about it for a second.
Certainly there's something, sir. Strong opinions out here, Sam.
The Let's Go Brandon movement.
Welcome to St. Petersburg, Florida. We are here on St. Petersburg Pier in one of the most progressive areas of Florida. St. Petersburg, a very liberal city, a lot of liberals here. So we're asking liberals today, one, if they support Joe Biden, President Joe Biden.
Only 2 presidents in modern history have had lower approval ratings at this stage of the game.
And 2, what's your favorite President Joe Biden accomplishment?
Nothing. Doesn't accomplish a damn thing.
I'm sure we're going to get a ton of responses. I'm sure people know exactly what to say. Let's go find out today on Benny on the Block, St. Petersburg, Florida edition. What is your favorite Joe Biden accomplishment?
Win the election. What is the act that they passed? I can't think of the name of it. Where the people got the money when he first got in. Nothing. Doesn't accomplish a damn thing. He's useless. You started talking.
Oh no!
Not the one to talk to about that.
Maybe you are the one to talk to, though. What? Well, maybe you are.
My favorite accomplishment is that he's screwing up so bad he won't accomplish much.
Yeah.
So,
where's Kamala? What's your favorite Kamala's accomplishment?
She never had any in the Senate. That she never does anything, so she can't hurt too much.
Strong opinions out here, Sam. Strong opinions in St. Petersburg, Florida. She was so upset at the question that she said, "You don't want me to answer that question. I'm out of here." And there she goes. There she goes. What is your favorite Joe Biden accomplishment?
The Let's Go Brandon movement.
Let's Go Brandon. That's also a new favorite among Americans. Well, the reporter actually thinks they're cheering Brandon, but when you listen closely, no, they're not. Take a look.
It's such an unbelievable moment.
Brandon, you also told me you can hear the chants from the crowd. Let's go, Brandon.
Please explain, sir.
It's just brought comedy to the entire country, and I think that a bunch of people think it's hilarious.
Where would we be without Let's Go Brandon memes?
Our country would be in a burning hole.
Yes, thank you.
Just not being on the news every day with craziness.
Not being on the news every day. Did you hear that, Sam? Not being on the news every day, best accomplishment.
None.
No, none.
Can you? I can tell by your hat. You're gonna have a great answer here. What's your favorite thing that Joe Biden's done as president?
I have to think about it for a second. Honestly, I don't really think that he's fit to be our president. He never should have been, because he doesn't have our country's best interest in mind. We need to get people working again, and we need to get out of debt. And, that's something that Trump did. He started that trend, and if you look at it, he had the highest success rate of getting us out of poverty, in history ever. So I think, we need to have Trump back in, or someone like Trump, or someone with a business mind. I don't think we should have a politician as a president. I think we should have a businessman as a president, because the country needs to be ran as a successful business.
Well, I don't know. I don't want him to come back and get us if we answer the wrong thing. I don't think Joe Biden could come get anyone. He couldn't even come get the Americans out of Afghanistan. It's no big deal, right?
Being honest. That's what I was.
For being honest.
Right, opposed to dishonest.
About what?
Everything.
President Biden, on the day that the last U.S. soldiers were evacuated from Afghanistan, called it an extraordinary success. To me, that is the lie of the 21st century. It's untrue, it's dishonest, and if President Biden believes it, he is delusional.
Look, Sam, I found an entire beach filled with the people who have given Joe Biden a positive approval rating.
With multiple major crises spiraling out of control, Americans are turning on the Biden White House. 3 new polls show Joe Biden underwater by double digits. According to Gallup, Biden's support among independents, it is now cratered to just 37%.
What is your favorite Joe Biden accomplishment?
Being the worst president.
Being the worst president? Well, the polls are on your side, actually. The polls do show that he's the most unpopular president since 1945. So, as a 9-year-old, how has Joe Biden's presidency affected you?
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
No, they weren't chanting, "Let's go, Brandon," at all.
Listen, it's a beautiful, family-friendly area down here. A lot of kids. We got playgrounds and everything like that. If you're watching this right now, Joe Biden, stay away. These kids, stay away. I know the kid's hair, very sniffable, but you need to stay away. This is a no Joe Biden zone here. No Joe Biden zone, okay? There's security. You stay away.
And when I talk to all your folks out in the playground, as I joked and said, everybody knows I like kids better than people. Fortunately, they're like me. That's why maybe I like them.
What is your favorite accomplishment of Joe Biden, President Joe Biden?
Nothing.
Everything Biden touches becomes an unmitigated disaster. I can't cite a single success.
That's why do gotta go.
What is your favorite Kamala Harris accomplishment?
Who?
Kamala Harris?
I don't know who that is.
President Joe Biden not doing super great in the approval rating category, and not doing super great down here with his constituency of liberals living in St. Petersburg, Florida. They couldn't quite name a single accomplishment. A lot of, hey, honey, what was that thing? Hey, At least they could quote Joe Biden. Anyway, that's been our episode today. Tough question down here in St. Petersburg. What's your favorite Joe Biden and Kamala Harris accomplishment? Nobody was quite sure. Some pretty wet answers. But hey, we got nothing to cry about on this show. We are having a great time down here in the free state of Florida. This has been Benny Johnson on Benny on the Block. This episode of Benny on the Block, St. Petersburg edition. See you next week. Hey, it's Benny Johnson here, Turning Point USA's Chief Creative Officer. If you like this video you just watched, be sure to subscribe to the official Turning Point USA channel and never miss an episode. See you guys next week.
Welcome to Debate Night, everybody. My name is Charlie Kirk. Tonight's guest is a self-proclaimed democratic socialist, a philosophy professor at Georgia State University, Perimeter College, and an adjunct professor at Rutgers University. He's a columnist for the Jacobin magazine and has written 4 books, including his most recent, Christopher Hitchens, What He Got Right, How He Went Wrong, and Why He Still Matters. In addition to all of that, he hosts the podcast, Give Them an Argument, which you can find on his Patreon, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Please join me in welcoming Professor Ben Burgis to Debate. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Debate Night. With us tonight is Ben, or Dr. Burgis, or Ben Burgis, however you want to say it. We're going to be debating, and we'll see where it leads us, Democrat socialism versus conservative populism. Super thrilled that Ben is here tonight to have this discussion. It'll start with some opening statements, and then we'll take it from there. The 2 minutes is yours, Dr. Burgis.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk, and thank you to Town Circle for setting this up. So I'm a democratic socialist because I don't think anybody deserves to have less power or a dramatically worse life because of factors that are outside of their control. So that's the first part. That's the philosophical basis. Concretely, I think it's obscene that we have an economic system where workers at Amazon warehouses skip bathroom breaks because they're worried about falling behind in their quotas, and their boss literally owns his own spaceship. Now, we can argue about what a fairer society would look like. I can contrast what I would see as utopia with what you would, and I'm always up for that kind of thing. I'm sure we'll get into some of it later. But what I'd really like to start out with is not so much that end point as the baby steps towards justice that we could take right now. Things like raising taxes on rich people to pay for social programs that would benefit the rest of us. Things like raising the minimum wage for the working poor. Things like making it easier for ordinary people to organize unions so they can have at least a little bit of a say at what happens in the workplaces where they spend half their waking lives. And I gotta say, what always confuses me about you, Charlie, is that I've seen you say that you're not like an old style kind of corporate Republican in the Reagan, Bush, William F. Buckley kind of mold. And certainly the politicians you seem to be most enthusiastic about, people like Donald Trump or J.D. Vance now, make a big deal saying they're populist, they really want to help like struggling people in the heartland. And if that's true, I don't really get why you don't support any of those things that I just mentioned.
Well, very good. It's almost exactly 2 minutes. So I'll respond. First of all, thank you for being here. And if we want to spend an extended period of time bashing Jeff Bezos, I'm all for that. I think it's actually going to be really fun. So let me just first kind of tell you what I believe and why we believe it. It's kind of framed as conservative populism. Put simply, we believe in the natural law. We believe, as the Declaration of Independence says, the laws of nature and nature's God. We believe in limitations on human beings, and we should believe there are limitations on power, both government power and, yes, of course, corporate power, as Barry Goldwater said in the 1960s. We also believe America is strongest when families are flourishing, when there's a strong moral center, when middle-class work is respected and appreciated. And the populist component to this is we need to be aware of what's happening around us, see when core institutions are failing, like the family, which has been failing over the last 60 years in America, which can be attributed to many different things. I would attribute it to the rise of an aggressive social welfare state and an overindulgence in neoliberalism, that we must be willing to do something about it when the family starts to disintegrate, when our nation starts to fall apart, when our borders remain wide open. And so we pair those two things together, conservative populism, and the kind of philosophical basis for a lot of this is the willingness to act with prudence and wisdom to try and fix things that matter, things that objectively matter. And I've been really looking forward to this discussion. I hope it's more of a discussion than a debate, because we will disagree on plenty. But when you talk about an untouchable oligarchy, I completely agree. I think that there is an untouchable oligarchy in this country, both corporate and governmental, scientific and technological, that is crushing the everyday common man. Where I think we're going to disagree is that I think the end goal, the thing that we must strive to, is family formation, family protection, and that strong moral center. And conservative populism is a resurgence of focusing on these things and developing solutions to hopefully fix it.
All right. Well, I guess what I would say is when you talk about limited power, right? I get that. That makes sense to me. I think that absolutely, I think oftentimes actually people get the relationship between these things really wrong, and they'll think, well, the more you think that human nature is good and cooperative, the more you might think that a fairer society is possible, and the more you think that human nature is flawed and selfish and cruel, then the more you should think that, hey, we might as well just stick with free market capitalism. But I think the opposite is true. I think that the more you worry that given too much power over another, one person over another, that person is going to treat the other the way that Walmart treats its employees, the way that Harvey Weinstein treated aspiring actresses. The more you're worried about that, the more you should want power to be distributed as evenly as at all possible. And that's really why I'm a democratic socialist, that I think whether you're talking about Russia under Stalin or Amazon under our mutual friend Jeff Bezos.
Not a friend.
Then any time you have one person having way too much power over another without democratic accountability, I think you're going to get really bad abuses.
So I think that's helpful. Where I think we'll disagree, though, is the means of which we can represent individual people against oppressors or people that have power. This is why I tend to defend markets. And I want to be very clear. Markets are a tool, something we set up to hopefully help human beings. There are externalities. There are jerks and dirtbags like Jeff Bezos that tend to con the system, not pay taxes, not treat their workers. And one of the reasons why this has become an emphasis, I think, of conservatives is we're willing to use prudence in a non-dogmatic way and say, wait a second, if we're trying to conserve something that is eternal and beautiful and true, is it a good thing that this kind of, let's just use Bezos again, $200 billion of net worth, while the average American family is struggling to pay off student loan debt or financial debt? Where I think we're going to explore, I can't do this in the remaining 20 seconds I have though, is true decentralization must happen in a way that is consistent with both reining in the administrative state and reining in the technological and corporate power sources in our country. And the ultimate form of decentralization is the family. Strong families, strong households.
All right. So I guess when you talk about the family, sure, absolutely. If people, social institutions are making it harder to keep families together, that's a bad thing. I think that I would point to the financial pressures that that people are often under as a huge source of problems within families, as a huge reason for relationships and marriages failing. And that's something that I think would be helped by doing things like changing labor laws to make it easier to organize unions so people would be getting better wages and have more job stability, less of what employers like to call, flexibility and everybody else calls precarity. And so that might be one place to start exploring this is, maybe you'll surprise me here, right? But I do not think we disagree. We agree on that.
So, yeah, just, am I good to respond?
Yeah,
okay,
go for
good.
it.
No, I just didn't want to take any of your time.
No, please.
So I want to get into the union argument. I want to get into the minimum wage argument. I want to get into the healthcare argument. And I'm glad for you to say, and I really want to zero in on this, that family formation is a good thing. Because that is something that is debated amongst some Democrat socialist circles. And once we kind of get into the back and forth, I want to ask you about that. Because certain activist organizations tend to disagree. Some activist organizations will call the family oppressive, patriarchal, where I believe the family is beautiful and the ultimate social bedrock institution. And every single statistic shows that when families are flourishing, divorce rates remain low, which they aren't currently, that crime goes down and literacy goes up, and communities flourish. And I think one thing we can agree on, and you said it a little bit differently than I would, I think it's wrong when corporations are making families choose between spending another 10 hours at some soulless job or spending a weekend with your kids. I think the priority should be through our public policy, and our laws should always be toward the development of children and families getting stronger.
Well, I think that if you want to have a traditional family, absolutely, you should be able to do that. You talked about activist organizations. I think that I would point to, like, you know, the Working Families Party in New York, for example, as an activist organization that clearly has no problem with families. Of course, if you want to live some other way, that's great, true. I think in a pluralistic society, I think everybody should be able to strive for their vision of the good life, and everybody should be free to live in the way that they want to be free. And I think that this is one of the biggest problems. You know, when we talk about things like healthcare, oftentimes people on my side will emphasize the fact that life expectancy is higher in places like Canada, the UK, where they have socialized healthcare, and infant mortality. And you want to talk about families, you know, people's babies are less likely to die in places like Canada, the UK, than in the United States. And mortality amenable to healthcare, which is a stats nerd way of saying that you're less likely to die from treatable diseases, is lower in those places. And I think all those are true and important, but I don't think it's the most important thing, because most of us are not on the verge of dying most of the time. Most of us are not worried that our babies are going to die most of the time. The biggest way, I think, that not providing everybody with health care as a right affects the lives of most people is that it makes us less free, because people are a lot less likely to leave jobs that they hate if they're worried about, will I still have health insurance? Will my family still have health insurance? People stay in those jobs and don't pursue their dreams all the time because of that. There are people, you know, I think people who are in good families and they want to keep them together, absolutely, they should be able to do that. But there are also people who stay in bad or even abusive marriages because they cannot afford to lose their spousal health insurance. And so I think that we're not only happier and we not only live longer, but I think we're also freer if we take care of those things.
So that's an interesting point. And what you're articulating, as before we get into the back and forth here, is what Lyndon Baines Johnson would call freedom from necessity, which is something I take exception with. I do not believe the state should play an interventionist role in saying that it is the role of government to say that you should be free from wants or necessity. I would argue that through a natural rights compact, that you should be free to pursue virtue. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't have a social safety net, which far too often becomes a hammock, not a social safety net. But I think the design of government and the state, which is really what we're debating here, right? What is the role of public policy, should be supporting things that are objectively good for people, for children, for the nation, and for the country. And so I'm happy to go into the kind of three categories that are common points of Democrat socialists next: healthcare, union membership, and kind of the development of unions, and minimum wage laws, because I would argue that some of your policy prescriptions do the opposite. They don't actually help working families. They actually raise prices and hurt job mobility. But I want to take a short break, and then we'll go back and forth, if that's okay.
Sure.
Everybody, we'll be right back.
Let's do it.
United States of America, this great country of ours, we American Indians, we can be anything we want to be, except American Indians.
A lot of the soldiers were very aggressive, so the women did get raped.
What we call huelte. Huelte means a place of suffering, dying, starvation, nothing good. Just like the Nazi concentration camps.
I didn't realize how corrupt things were. I didn't realize what kind of environment we were living in.
We had no running water, we had no power.
They de-incentivize people from, opportunity.
That's why our suicide rate has climbed up astronomical rates.
I moved from the poorest county in America, the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, to the richest area in the country, the Navajo Indian Reservation. There is no difference. The poorest and richest reservations in our nation suffer from identical problems. This is not anything new. This is an everyday occurrence in all tribal governments.
So my life and And my tale and my truth has been to fight socialism. And I'm hoping that I can wake up as many Navajos as I can to tell them that you can do this. Yeah, even if I have to fight you to save you. And I think that's what I'm also projecting to my people. Even though they are so harsh on social media and they completely hammer at me, I tell them, I'll be here even if I have to fight you to save you.
What if I told you that this has all happened before? The riots, violence, church burning, attacks on police, destruction of private property.
My name is Sammy Steigman. I am a Holocaust survivor.
This is the reality of what happens when you have capitalism that goes to socialism.
El socialismo no funciona. El socialismo no funciona.
Welcome back, everybody. All right, no more rules. We can interrupt each other. It's totally voluntary, unlike socialism. I'm kidding. That's my first socialist joke tonight. So let me ask, so I want to ask you just kind of generally about Democrat socialism.
Sure, yeah, let's do it.
Where would you point to as 1, 2, or 3 examples that you think are the best embodiment of the worldview that you hold?
Yeah, so I think that that all of the things that I want, I do not think exist together right now in the world. But if you want to talk about places where a lot of the policy goals that I'd support, have been implemented, I certainly don't think they're fully socialist societies by any stretch of the imagination, but I think a lot of it has been implemented. I would talk about, the places you'd expect me to talk about, your Swedens, your Finlands, your Denmarks, your Norways. Now, these are complicated societies that, there are right-wing parties win elections sometimes too, and they do things that I don't like. But I think that these are places, broadly speaking, where a lot has been done to take certain things, like healthcare, for example, outside of the market so that people have that kind of freedom that I'm talking about, that they're not tied to jobs that they hate because they're worried that they and their families' basic needs aren't going to be taken care of if they don't stay in that subservient relationship. And you talked earlier about how you want the state to support things that are objectively good.
Yes.
It seems to me that living longer is objectively good.
Yes.
Having lower infant mortality is objectively good. And I would also say that having greater freedom to live your life how you want and not being tied to a particular job, I think that's also objectively
So
good.
job mobility is interesting. I want to get into that. So I'm not stunned you mentioned the Scandinavian countries.
Sure, yeah.
So Denmark doesn't have a minimum wage.
Well, but you got to do the other half of that. That they don't have a minimum wage, but they have vastly more favorable terrain for unions than the United States does, and so a lot of the wage floor is enforced that way. It's still not just they get whatever the market says they get.
But no government mandated minimum wage. What I find interesting, and there are some aspects of the Scandinavian countries appeal to me.
Sure.
According to the World Economic Freedom Index, every country outside of Norway is more economically free than the United States. And so is that something that would interest you? If economic freedom is the definition of your view, then I would change the Bernie Sanders shirt.
I think that what I mean by economic freedom and what they mean by economic freedom are going to be very different. I think oftentimes if you look at the methodology of those lists, it's very unclear. Like you'll get like the Cato Institute or whoever in some cases will do these lists where they rank places by freedom. And it's like, the things that they get points for, the things they don't get points for. Abortion doesn't matter. Whether you can have raw milk matters. I think are at least unclear to me. But I think this is the bigger philosophical thing,
Sure.
though, right? Like let's just do this rather than getting into the nitty gritty about the lists. I think that what those guys mean by economic freedom is how much business owners are free to conduct their business however they want, without interference by the state. What I would mean by freedom in an economic context is the right of ordinary people to live the kinds of lives that they want to live and not be under the thumb to the extent that people are in the United States of whatever some corporation, wants to make them do.
Right, and so just to clarify
Sure.
this though, about some of the Scandinavian countries, they went through massive deregulation in the 1980s, right? Many of these Scandinavian countries did, including Denmark. Denmark has actually come out and has said, stop calling us socialist. We are not socialist. You've seen that quote.
Well, I have seen it, but here's
okay,
what, here,
good.
but I would like to say
Please
something
do.
about this. And people could check out, I actually wrote something about this last summer for Arc Digital Media.
I think I read it.
Okay, well, there you go. So
I know where you're going before you say this.
All right, well, beautiful.
But the audience doesn't know, so please
happily,
tell
though,
them.
there are people who are watching who don't know, so
Yes.
let's say it anyway. So I think that saying that there's that hey, here is this center-right kind of prime minister who says no, these social gains have nothing to do with socialism. And you say, oh, well, he says it, right? So therefore, he must be speaking for, Denmark as a whole, the Danish hive mind, I think is approximately equivalent to if the only two, if you were from Denmark and the only two Americans you'd ever talked to were Bernie Sanders and me, and you said, well, here's what they say about what America's all about. Here's what they say about, Social Security or the post office. This is the American point of view. I think, if you look at how long socialist parties were in power in Denmark and how many of those programs came about under them, I would not say that these are societies that have achieved socialism. We could certainly talk about what that would mean to me. But I would say that these are societies where socialist parties allied with strong unions have brought about really beneficial social reforms as an effort to move farther in that direction.
So let's talk about Norway,
Sure,
a country that
yeah.
I'm familiar with, you're familiar with. Very wealthy country.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I think the biggest reason is that they have done something that I'm sure that you wouldn't support, which is nationalize their oil industry.
You mean use fossil fuels, not keep it in the ground like Bernie Sanders would be. Bernie Sanders has tweeted, we need to keep all fossil fuels in the ground, but Norway's built $1 trillion sovereign wealth fund after.
Okay, so would you support that?
Nationalization? No, but it's better than keeping it in the ground.
Okay,
Sure.
I mean, look, I think ultimately we probably are better off, transitioning to other energy sources. But if we're going to use oil, I would much rather that oil be in the hands of the people, that it fund generous social programs like in Norway. And I often do kind of get a sense when conservatives say this. It's like, oh, well, there's really nothing socialist about it. They've just nationalized the oil industry and used the proceeds to fund all of these social programs. I mean, if that's not socialist, can we at least have that not socialist thing? That sounds nice to me.
Let me clarify, is that if there is wealth to be redistributed, there must be wealth to be redistributed.
Sure,
And
yeah.
Norway has the advantage of having some of the most strategic oil reserves in the country. And I just pinpoint it in particular because there tends to be this anti-fossil fuel development movement.
I mean, it's something Norway and the United States have in common, is that we have a lot of oil. Now, if you want to, again, I know you've said you don't want to do this.
No, of course, I think the private ownership of minerals is a strategic advantage for the United States. But let me ask you about what I
Sure.
think is one of the reasons why I think the Scandinavian countries' pursuit of egalitarianism looks good on paper.
Okay, let's do it.
And this is strict immigration. Now, this has changed in recent years because of a lot of the Syrian refugee crisis and more kind of left-wing governments taking over Sweden in particular. But Norway, for example, takes in about 70 immigrants a day, even with their more relaxed policies. America, much bigger country, albeit, 2,740 legal immigrants, about 5,000 if you include the people going across the southern border. Do you, as being a Democrat socialist, do you support closed borders and strict immigration?
No, I don't, and I'll tell you why. So two reasons. One is that I think that, all of the economic data that I've seen says that having more immigrants actually increases the amount of wealth that society has to go around. And the second is I would ask what the alternatives are, right? So, we can do, like those families that, that you talk about, right? We can do things like separating families. We can do things like raiding, churches, to drag out immigrants. But I think we would really, really, really have to step up that by a factor of 100 to actually get rid of all the undocumented immigrants in the country. Whereas I think a much better solution, if what you're worried about is, hey, here are people coming in who, yeah, they definitely contribute to economic growth, but here are people coming in who are willing to work for low wages or whatever. I think a much better solution to that problem is for those people to have a pathway to citizenship so that they're not afraid to do things like join unions, or they're not afraid to do things like, take their employers to court when they violate labor laws. I think that's a much better solution to that problem than the sort of heavy-handed, police state kinds of tactics, which I think would be the only way that you're actually going to resolve the status quo in the other direction.
One of the things I like about Norway that you just said you don't like is to become a Norwegian citizen, you must speak the native language. It's a non-negotiable. You must have citizenship by birth is not applicable. And you must have lived in Norway for at least 8 out of the past 11 years. And so maybe you can help clarify this for me, because the mascot you're wearing on your shirt has changed on this, because I would understand the position you're espousing more if you said, hey, we're going to close off the borders, we're going to take care of our fellow countrymen, we are going to reject these globalist institutions, because Bernie Sanders used to say that. In 2013, Bernie Sanders said, it does not make sense to me to bring hundreds of thousands of those workers into this country to work for minimum wage and compete with American kids. Bernie Sanders said in 2007, 6 years prior, if poverty is increasing and if wages are going down, I don't know why we need millions of people to be coming into this country as guest workers. What changed?
Well, I think that the main thing that changed is that the context of both of those quotes that you just read was not about whether there should be a pathway to citizenship. It was about exactly the opposite. It was about the Bush administration's interest in 2007 and then later revivals of it in 2013, attempts to create a guest worker program, which I think he rightly compared to legalized slavery. A lot of immigrant rights groups were actually against those proposals for the same reasons, because those are things that, instead of giving people the rights of Americans so that they aren't afraid to do things like organize unions, those are things that would essentially just legalize the status quo, that this is a second tier of workers who are not going to have those citizenship rights, who it's much easier to, it's easy, who you can kick out of the country if their employer decides they don't like them anymore. And I think that that is a completely different thing. I think it could also, so I think in that case, I think there's less of a contradiction there than you think. But hey, look, Bernie Sanders isn't on my shirt because I think that the man is infallible. I could rattle off a list of things that he's gotten wrong over the years, but the reason he is that I think he's been the most important champion of doing things like raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, like giving everybody health care, ending the wars, et cetera, that would actually really materially benefit the majority of the population. And I guess I really struggle when I hear, conservatives being interested in the welfare of the working class suddenly when it's this issue of competition from low-wage workers, which is a question of pitting some workers over other workers. But when it's a question of doing things that would benefit workers in general, like raising the minimum wage, like giving everybody health care, then suddenly it seems to be a different story. Suddenly it seems to be that this is too interventionist, this is too administrative state. I mean, kicking immigrants out seems like a big expansion of state power to me too.
Well, I want a small yet strong government. Strong in what it does, and foreign citizens, not foreign citizens, sure, or illegals in the country should be deported, should be taken out. And I think there's a cultural aspect to it. It's deep down you agree with, and that's what Norway gets right. They realize if you don't speak the language, you don't have a shared culture, then there's something that all of a sudden makes it less like a nation and more like a colony, or more like a temporary place for corporations to make money. Let's talk about the minimum wage. Sure. So the reason why I don't want abrupt, quick, let's say, increases in minimum wage is it actually hurts workers. Washington Post, a very credible new study on Seattle's $15 minimum wage, says the following: workers have seen cut payrolls, they've been put off hiring, reducing hours, or letting their workers go. That is Seattle. Another study from Target, just because Target raised their wages abruptly in 2019, shows that workers say their hours were cut, leaving them struggling. Another one,
okay, so
I can go through them. I have a whole packet of them.
Let's pause and do the first
Seattle,
couple.
The same thing. I go through New York.
First couple first, because in Seattle there have been a bunch of different studies, including one from UC Berkeley, I know, that have, I don't know which one was published by Jeff Bezos' newspaper that you're referring to there.
Trust me, I'm no fan of the Washington Post.
But there was another study from UC Berkeley saying that actually it had no effect on the employment rate in the restaurant industry, and it achieved its goals. I know if you look at the Congressional Budget Office, which oftentimes people with your position love to cite, they said that if you raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and by the way, I thought it was interesting that you said abrupt, because I'm interested in whether you'd be okay with it if you did it slowly.
I think moderately kept up with inflation, done prudently, especially as we're about to have a period of mass inflation. I think that coupled with a workers' tax cut and other pro-growth policies wouldn't be the worst thing for the economy.
Okay.
No. I think that's a moderate economic position.
But keeping up with inflation, right? Like you're still saying the purchasing power of low-wage workers should be what it is now. And I would say that if you want to run this argument that, well, it's actually going to hurt, that's actually going to hurt workers more than help them.
The studies show that it has.
I don't think the studies do show that.
Well, so here's what it says. Low-wage workers.
Here's why. I understand what you're saying, that the studies show, some of the studies show that minimum wage increases lead to increased unemployment. That's the big claim that's usually made. Sometimes people will also say that leads to a reduction in hours, but the big one is usually increased unemployment. And so I'd say two things about this. First of all, the effect of minimum wage increases on employment is like the most studied thing in empirical economics in the last several decades. And there are studies you can find that say yes. There are a lot of studies that you can find that say no. And a word I almost never hear from people who say that it's going to lead to unemployment increases is meta-study, right? In other words, if you look at a bunch of studies over time and see since you can have, very small sample sizes and making big conclusions from very small sample sizes is generally, and then making a big deal about them in the press, that's how people end up believing that plants can think and coffee cures cancer, that they looked at some study with some super small sample size. But when you do the meta study of a bunch of different studies, most of those show no. But let's say for the sake of argument, yes. Let's say that it does lead to some unemployment increase.
Because you agree certain studies do show that.
Yes, certain studies do show that. I think most of them, and especially meta studies over time, say no, but sure, let's say yes. So if yes, would that mean that it was going to hurt workers more than help them? Well, we could look at the Congressional Budget Office, what they said in 2019, which was that 2/3 confidence that you'd have a range of unemployment effects somewhere in between 0 and 3.7 million. And most likely, they said 1.3 billion people would lose their jobs. Now, that's bad. I don't want 1.3 billion people to lose their jobs.
That's a lot of jobs.
But they also said that 27 million people would keep the jobs that they have right now and be paid more and would have more purchasing power. And so we say, okay, we have 27 million people who are being lifted out of poverty by this. We have 1.3 billion people out of jobs. Now, even if there was nothing that you could do about that, I'd still say that treating this as a knockdown, well, this is going to help poor people, working poor people more than it's hurt them, more than it's going to help them, I don't think makes sense. But also, I don't think we have to accept that those 1.3 billion people, if that's a true estimate, have to be permanently out of a job. We could have public works programs that could employ those 1.3 billion people, give them dignified, unionized public sector jobs. And if you don't think that there's plenty of work for those 1.3 billion people to do in terms of federal public works, trust me, I could give you a long list of things they could be doing.
Let me build out the study, and then I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
So low-wage workers on average now clock 9% fewer hours, earn $125 less each month. That's Seattle. There's another one, New York City businesses struggle to keep up after a minimum wage increase. Would you support eliminating the FICA contribution for workers? That's a 7% tax on wages before we even talked about raising the minimum wage.
Well, I'd like to talk about raising the minimum wage with no preconditions,
but why not the workers' tax cut? That's what I always don't understand, because we tax workers at 7%.
Mm-hmm.
7% of our workers here lose their paycheck as half of their FICA contribution. I never hear that from workers' rights advocates. Why?
Well, I think that first of all, the first question you'd have to ask is what's the money that's going to be generated by that for those workers? Then the second question that you want to ask is what's going to be lost on the other end in terms of services if that's cut. And I think that paying people a higher minimum wage, having those 27 million people get a living wage.
I can give them a 7%. I can give them a 7% wage increase tomorrow. It's called cutting the FICA tax.
Yeah.
Every working person deserves 7% of their wages that are currently being taken by them by the government. Why don't you instantaneously agree?
So what are you going to? Well, because I know what the other shoe is that's going to drop there. What are you going to cut to pay for that tax
okay,
increase?
so there's plenty. I could name a whole litany of departments I think I would cut to try to pay for it. But let's pretend that it's paid for, like what everything Washington D.C. says.
Yes,
Wouldn't it be worth it?
If you could cut workers' wages and not
wages, the
sorry,
taxes.
the taxes on workers' wages. If you could cut that, and on the other end, there would be absolutely no loss in anything that's a beneficial thing that's going to make workers' lives better, then sure, why not? But I think I think you should still raise the minimum wage, because I think, again, having those 27 million people now having a living wage, having the ripple effects for lots of people who are already making more than the minimum wage, that's going to increase their wages, and then 1.3 million people need new jobs. Trust me, we can take care of that.
So you're obviously no fan of President Trump or his administration. During his presidency, the bottom 10% of workers actually had an income grow faster than the top 10% of workers. And so what we saw was a real blue-collar boom in the prior administration.
I think what
without having to abruptly raise the minimum wage. And the reason was, let me just finish, is an emphasis on entrepreneurship. This is an indicator that I don't hear talked about a lot, which is how many new businesses are being started. And when you raise the minimum wage, it's harder for the deli owner, the dry cleaner to enter into the market, because all of a sudden the labor pool is like, man, $15 an hour, I could barely pay to keep the lights on. So if we want new business, and you agree, entrepreneurship is a good thing, right?
I think it's good to have new businesses. I'd like more of them to be organized as worker cooperatives.
We're going to talk about unions in a second.
We could get into that.
I want to get deep into unions.
But I do just want to say on what you're claiming about the Trump economy, because I think this is an important point, right? So yes, sure. What explains those numbers that you just mentioned? You'd say it's a new emphasis on entrepreneurship. I'd say it's two things.
I could go through other things
too,
including an energy renaissance.
But I think the primary things are two things. One, that quite a few states during that time period actually did raise their minimum wage, and I think that had a big effect on that. Two, sure, that employment increases give workers more bargaining power, which a lot of conservatives now object to. They say, oh, nobody wants to work. But employment increases give workers more bargaining power in the labor market, and that's a good thing. But that's not really this new emphasis on entrepreneurship that Trump was doing. If you look at all the employment figures, whether you're looking at the overall civilian employment rate in the United States, or whether you're breaking it down, black, white, Hispanic, whatever, all of those, you see the same trend, which is that in 2009, at the beginning of the Obama presidency, when the effects of the 2008 crash were really coming in, all of those were way up here. That it was like, you have like 10% unemployment. Over the course of the 8 years of Obama, it goes from 10% to 4.7% overall civilian, unemployment. And then sure, under the 4 years of Trump, or, like we'll give them a pass for the COVID part, but under those years of Trump, then you go from 4.7 to 3.5. So that is a continuation at an overall slower rate, but a continuation of what had happened before. And the reason I'm bringing that up is not that I'm a big Obama guy. I mean, look.
No, I know you're not.
As you know, I'm a Bernie Sanders would be a good start guy. But
and I want to get into that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think you are
cleverly
cloaking your radicalism in three issues that are agreed upon. We're gonna get to the root of that.
I don't think so. I think I front-loaded the radicalism and said these would be baby steps in the right direction. And I'm very confused about how you could be a populist without supporting those baby steps.
We're all Hegelians now, I suppose. Let me ask you this question.
No. But I do want to finish the point, because I think it's an important one, right? That it's not that I think Obama is great. It's that I think that if you're going to say the populist thing about Trump economics, even though this is a guy who appointed hardcore union busters to the National Labor Relations Board, this is a guy who tried to throw millions of people off of health care, in terms of going against the Medicaid expansion. This is a guy, who tried to make it a lot harder to qualify for food aid for those families you talked about. That the big populist thing is that he oversaw economic growth and hence job growth. Well, hey, if that's enough to be a populist, Barack Obama was a better populist than he was, and Bill Clinton was a big populist because he oversaw lots of economic growth
and
in
that's
the
not
1990s.
what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is that it's mischaracterized that the people that you say you care about, the lower workers, actually did really well under those 4 years. I think Trump could have been more conservative, more populist in certain things. And just to clarify on the food stamp issue, millions of people got off of food stamps under Trump voluntarily because their wages went up. But I don't want to get too bogged. I really don't want to get too bogged down on the Trump presidency.
You had
thing.
that extra 1% and change of unemployment going down, which is a continuation of previous trends. But
so let me kind of ask you more broadly. I guess we could go into some of these other aspects.
I have a question I'd love to ask you in a minute, by the way, but go for it.
Yeah, you're free to do that too, by the way. Do you trust the government?
Do I trust the government? Do I trust the government to tell me the truth, to do things that no, the government, by and large, that I think that those millionaires and billionaires, the guy in the shirt likes to talk about, exert vastly too much influence. But here's where I think people often go wrong from that true premise that the government is untrustworthy. I think premise is fine, but the conclusion, therefore we should have less government, in the sense of we should have less expansive social services, we shouldn't give everybody health care. I think that that's a fundamental confusion, because I think that there's a difference between talking about what the government can do to you, and there we're talking about police, ICE, the expansion of the national security state,
this is important.
And what the government has a legal obligation to do for you in terms of supporting what I would see as fundamental human rights like healthcare and education.
Let me tell you where I think there's a flaw in this, and I really want you to talk about this. You say healthcare and education. There must be bureaucrats to enforce these things. You need the administrative state. So then you get the CDC, you get the NIH, you get unregulated agencies that you, as being someone who focuses on democracy, focuses on the power of the people, where is the check and balance against the CDC, the NIH, HHS? For every government program, you need hundreds of thousands of desk workers, which is where the word bureaucrat comes from in French. So you say you don't trust the government, yet you support expanding the social services, which will then necessarily expand government. Why do you want to expand something you don't trust?
Well, first of all, congratulations on the French vocabulary. I like it. But
I have other words too. We could, après nous les déluge, which means after me the flood. We could talk about all my favorite French terms if you'd like. We could do a whole thing. You write for the Jacobin magazine, for goodness sake, so we could exchange notes on Robespierre and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. I've only read the Confessions once. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'd be happy to do all of that. Although, my French is like Duolingo. I can't do that much. But
I'm done, I promise.
But I would say that if you don't want bureaucrats to have more power, if that's the big objection.
No, that's part of the objection.
Okay,
it's an element of it.
Sure. So let's start with that element. So if you don't want bureaucrats to have more power, then the thing that you should really object to, right? Because you said earlier, you think we got to have some kind of social safety net. So we're agreeing that there are some social services programs. We're arguing about how expansive they should be and how they should work.
Generous versus limited.
Sure. Okay, but this is the thing. If you want those bureaucrats to have less power, you don't want limited. That's the last thing that you want. You want generous, and here's why. You're gonna have to convince me on this one. I know. Like I really liked what you just did there. That was some good.
So to restrain their power, you must give them a lot of power.
No, you're not giving them any power. You're taking away their power. It's a really simple argument. Here's how it goes. That means-tested programs give power to bureaucrats. When you say you have to jump through all these hoops to qualify for something, and there's some bureaucrat who gets to decide whether you get it or not,
here's why you're
bureaucrats have more power. Whereas when you say this is a legal right that every single person has as a citizen, no Canadian is having a bureaucrat decide whether they qualify for healthcare. Or in Finland, you talked about all of the policies that, in Norway that you thought would be an issue for me. Finland
is the poorest
where they have,
country.
Okay, I don't think it's because of this, but in Finland, where they don't even have private schools, and certainly you have a right to higher education as a citizen, the way that you have historically in lots of countries, and I think it's worked very well. But when you have that, you don't have students jumping through financial aid, bureaucracy, hurdles, and does this person qualify to get school? Does that person qualify to school? Where bureaucrats have the power to decide what's up, because that's the case where bureaucrats have power over you. If everybody gets something as a right of citizenship, bureaucrats have no power in that circumstance.
But let me ask you something, though. So you want Medicare for all.
Yeah.
Yet HHS is the largest civilian branch of our government. So as we have expanded Medicare, as we have expanded Medicaid, it hasn't been means tested as you want. We have hundreds of thousands of desk workers that are doing the means testing. Are you qualified?
Yeah.
Medicare reimbursements. And so even under your example,
Medicaid,
it's woefully idealistic. The point is
Medicaid is a means
you
tested.
cannot have a generous social program without a massive bureaucratic and, dare I say, corrupt administrative state.
Well, I think
Woodrow Wilson would even say that.
Well,
he says, need the administrative state.
You think I like Woodrow Wilson, the guy who
probably he was a college professor, and a college president, so he's kind of in your world.
Well, okay, trust me, neither of those things earn any points for me, but but I think that
that's fair.
But I mean, Woodrow Wilson is the guy who resegregated the federal bureaucracy after it was integrated.
Do a whole speech on
he
that.
put Eugene V. Debs in jail. Nobody on the left is going to see Woodrow Wilson as a hero. Liberals. Nobody on the left. But I was just going to say,
I know plenty of people that would, but that's fine.
I don't think you're going to find a lot of socialists.
FDR, LBJ, John Dewey, all these people believed in a strong administrative state.
I mean, you're rattling off a bunch of liberals, but that's okay. We don't need to argue about the historical figures. Let's just say this. If you're talking about administrative state, bureaucracy, well, your example is Medicaid, which is a means-tested program. And even at that, even despite the means testing, which is the part that gives the bureaucrats their power, which is also the part I'm objecting to, even despite that, we're talking about bureaucracies. As I think you mentioned earlier, the government has no monopoly on bureaucracies, plenty of bureaucracies in the private sector. And if you want to know which programs have the smallest overhead, right? Even Medicaid, even despite the means testing, Medicaid, Medicare, all of those have much smaller administrative overhead than any of the private insurance companies, because the private insurance companies, one, they have to plan out their strategy for competing with each other, and two, the private insurance companies have a vast bureaucracy that is dedicated to finding ways to deny people's claims, because they've always got one eye on the bottom line for shareholders. And one question I'm very curious about, by the way, is that you object for all of these reasons. You think it's too interventionist. You think it's too much administrative state, to just providing everybody with health care.
These are all elements of the critique.
Providing people with health care as a human right, so that you can have, like what people I know in the UK always tell me, which is, hey, when whatever, my mom got cancer, when whatever the situation is, people will say, the only person I ever talked about this was with a doctor, which is very different from Americans' experience with healthcare. If you can object to that on the grounds that that's too much big government, I am really curious whether you'd say the same thing for fire services. Like would you be okay with it if we didn't have public fire services?
Absolutely not. As I said, small but strong.
Okay.
The government exists, as it says in the preamble of the Constitution, amongst many other things, to secure the blessings of liberty, to ensure domestic tranquility. And Hamilton said it best, that you need a nimble yet effective federal government, good at what it does, but not overreaching. And that's the whole idea of conservative populism, is within this constitutional republic framework. I'm a big fan of firefighters, police officers. I'm a big fan of Border Patrol. I'm a big fan of all these sort of things. But when all of a sudden I believe you get outside of the constitutional limits, is where you birth this fourth branch of government. And our mutual hatred of Woodrow Wilson is a perfect example of this, because he really believed the state, this is a Hegelian idea, will usher in that utopia, that the state is God, that through the mechanisms of the state, we will be able to turn the chapter and with it remake man. He wasn't the only person that believed that. FDR did, Lyndon Baines Johnson did as well. Where we as conservatives and conservative populists say, hold on a second, that is not what the state is there to do for. Let me just say one last thing, which is that the state is there to preserve the natural law with prudence and wisdom, to hopefully develop families and foster children, not to try to remake human beings. When it comes to healthcare, not only do I have a moral complaint that it's not the role of government, it's also not good at doing it, and it also hurts the everyday common man. So I have two.
I don't think either of those things are true.
But I have a moral argument, and I also have a utilitarian argument. I just want to make sure that's clear.
Let's start with the moral argument, because I am very unclear on this, because why is it that having public firefighters or public police is not overreach, but having public health care is? Why would it be objectionable if instead of having public fire services that everybody gets to use, you had everybody just having to have private fire insurance, and if you had a better private fire insurance plan, they'd probably put out your fire, faster, or maybe we had public fire insurance, but only for people, the poorest people or the oldest people, which would be the exact equivalent for healthcare, or the same thing for policing, the equivalent, for like security insurance, because all of these things seem very similar to me, because having your house burned down, being victimized by a crime, or needing chemotherapy, those are all cases where your life and limb is in danger. Like, these seem pretty parallel to me. What do you see as the big disanalogy?
So the first problem, it's mostly local, police and fire, so therefore it's more accountable.
Okay.
So the dollars don't go to some sort of albatross to the kingdom of Washington, D.C. of unelected, unknown, kind of just unchecked bureaucrats. That's number one. Number two, we do have a system in the country, despite what you're saying, where if you need health care, you will be taken care of. Is it broken? Is it inadequate?
I just said, though, right?
Well, hold on a second. It's already, I'm saying it is illegal to deny someone service of care. Illegal. Now, do we have problems with our healthcare system? Do you think if you could put me in a room and I could strike a huge bargain with you? I think that there are elements of the German system that are admirable. I will say that. Where you have a public system and a private system. Where I start to all of a sudden say timeout, no go, no fly zone, is where I hear people like Bernie Sanders, and I'm paraphrasing, who want to get rid of private insurance as we know it. That's a big mistake. Healthcare, here's how I think the biggest problem with healthcare is. It's not individualized. It's way too bureaucratic, way too top-down. And yes, we have pharmaceutical companies that are addicting people to drugs that they should not be addicted to. We have a sick care problem in our country. And I agree with a lot of people on the left with this. On this, maybe we'll agree that we have an obesity problem, we have a problem of how we get our food, we have a corporate farming problem. I agree with all those things. Do I think that a government-run system of healthcare that will be more similar to how the IRS or how the Postal Service works, that's somehow going to be the solution to that? Absolutely not.
Well,
but if you put me in a room,
the Postal Service is amazing, and I do
Whoa.
not think.
Can you say that again?
The Postal Service is amazing. It has been an engine of upward mobility. It has been an engine of racial equality. If you building the black middle class, massively an engine of that.
Have you ever used the Postal Service?
I have, and the Postal Service will carry a letter from here to Alaska.
So will FedEx.
For no, not for the same price, and they're certainly not going to serve.
You know it's going to get there.
No, I do not know that, and it's certainly not going to do it. It's never going to get there with as much service to out-of-the-way rural areas.
I got to give you credit.
Anything.
I've never heard anyone defend the post office.
Like it's cheap. Well, you need to talk to more people, because like the post office is an amazing institution, and it should be massively expanded. In fact, one of the best things I think they have in some of those Scandinavian countries is postal banking, which, if we did that, Bernie Sanders' proposal would immediately put out of business all the payday loan vampires that prey on unbanked people, would create millions of new, good unionized jobs. Postal Service is great, but I do want to go back, because I don't want this to get, I don't want this to get lost.
The post office lost hundreds of thousands of packages and was 6 months late. That's who you want to run our healthcare system?
I think that, first of all, I think that if you actually have a fairer look at the numbers, I think the Postal Service does do a really good job. I think that oftentimes when people say no, they are not using the same metrics to evaluate it they'd use to evaluate everything else. But if you want to know something that would be very much like what Medicare for All would be like if we had it in the United States, then I'd say looking at delivery of packages is probably not what you want to do. What you probably want to look at is countries like Canada, where they already have Medicare for All, Great Britain, where they've gone further, and the hospitals are publicly owned.
That's all the. Let's talk about that.
Well, okay, but those are places.
That's a different
thing.
thing.
Where people live longer, where fewer of their babies die, where the rate of mortality amenable to health care is way better. Or look, you said you want it to be local. That you don't like the fact.
Super localized.
Sure, local, great. So if all the hospitals were municipally owned, you'd be cool with that?
all the hospitals, it would be, well, first of all, that's actually the case in a lot of places. There's a lot of county-run hospitals all across the country.
I'm not denying they're county-run.
Actually.
Okay, so you would be okay with that. So it really has nothing to do with centralization.
Well, no, it does. Trust me. The city of Chicago can be equally, if not more corrupt than the Kingdom of Washington, D.C.
Is it going to be more corrupt than the private insurance companies?
I mean, that's a good question.
Okay,
Let me ask you a question.
But you did also say, right, and I really want to make sure
that local is generally better, but I'm not going to die on the Cook County is a great county hill.
Well, this does go back to what you said earlier, though, when I asked you about fire protection, because you said, well, the difference is that nobody could be turned down from the hospital.
That is a law.
Yes, that is a law. I'm glad that it's a law.
I am too.
Okay, good, wonderful. We agree on that. That is a good government intervention to stop the private sector from doing what it would otherwise do and did otherwise do before that law was passed. But also, I would say, do the equivalent for the fire services. That the only people who get it without having to pay at the point of service are the poorest people, are the oldest people. Everybody else has to rely on private fire insurance, which varies wildly in quality. And if you don't have private fire insurance and you're not poor enough to qualify for the means-tested, bureaucrat-enabling system for poor people, and you're not old enough for the other one, and you end up having to have the fire department come and save you anyway, then you have a giant bill that's going to bankrupt you. Do you think that sounds like a fair system?
No. So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
So is that, here's where, how do you define healthcare? This is a very important question, right? Because healthcare could be, hey, I just got a gunshot wound I need to be taken care of. Absolutely. Or healthcare could be, I'm 800 pounds overweight, I'm eating terribly, I have no sort of interest to exercise or eat well. Why all of a sudden should that person be put into the same exact level of care of someone that has saved money and taken care of their health? Why should someone who's 800 pounds overweight be given in this sort of realm? Why should human agency and choice have zero emphasis at all?
What you're describing, the only difference between that and what already exists in the United States is that we would have to add, and they're rich enough that they can afford really high quality medical care. Right now, somebody who's 800 pounds, who doesn't watch their diet, who chain smokes, etc.
I agree, yes.
But
you could add chain smoking on
But
that.
sure, all those things.
So you think that none of that should be given a preference?
Well, here's what I'm saying, that I think in the system that we have right now, somebody who checks every single one of those boxes, but is rich enough to afford the best medical care, skips in line ahead of the person who takes care of their health, exercises every day, doesn't smoke, eats well, but lost their job or just is cobbling together 4 part-time jobs like so many Americans are, and thus doesn't have employer health insurance.
It's an interesting question. So you believe just because you have better money, you shouldn't be able to have better stuff?
I believe...
Or more money, better stuff?
I believe that when it comes to something like healthcare, no.
That's a very broad thing.
I do not believe that people should get life-saving services preferentially because of how much money they have. I think that...
So how much money they've saved. How about that? Someone saved their whole life, and they said, in case there's a disaster, I'm going to put $500 away a month. They get to age 45, and all of a sudden they realize that they have some sort of health complication. They shouldn't be able to take advantage of the money they've saved for their entire life?
Well, this actually goes back to the very first thing that I said. Like the opening couple sentences.
Of what is justice, I guess, right?
That I said, because what I said is that I don't want some people to have dramatically worse lives than others because of factors outside of their control. Now,
what about things they can control, though?
Well, if we
like saving
money. If we lived in a world where all economic inequality was due to thrift versus indolence or laziness versus industriousness, I would have much less objection to this stuff than I do in the world where we actually live, where somebody who saved up their whole lives, but then they have unexpected medical expenses that bankrupt them, which happens all the time. That they have is going to get worse health care than somebody who has never saved at all, but is somebody if Hunter Biden, right, had some massive medical bill tomorrow.
He would probably have, considering his lifestyle.
Sure, right? So if Hunter Biden had that huge medical bill tomorrow, then he would get in line ahead of people
for multiple reasons, both access to power and also money.
Sure.
So that's a good example.
Those are both bad things, but they have
largely unearned, and I agree.
Sure. So, and I would say the same thing about the Walton children. I would say the same thing about anybody who is inheriting money. When you go to the hospital, or you go to buy insurance, they don't ask you, did this money come from being thrifty and saving your whole life?
Let me ask you a question.
Or did this money come from stock ownership? Or did this money come from inheritance? They just ask, do you have the money to afford this?
And that's part of markets, right? Is that you're not able to make a moral claim for every dollar bill, but generally markets will go towards value and value creation. We're up against the hour break, and we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to resume, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got a lot more I want to go to, but I actually want to close this thought on one thing, because it goes to your other thing that
actually, could I mean, if you'll indulge me, could I ask you like a 30-second question?
Sure, because I really want to close that point.
I know we're coming up to it,
yes.
but I'm so fascinated by this, right? So we agreed earlier.
Is it the firefighter thing again?
It's not the firefighter.
Okay.
Although, I think there's more to discuss
I'm
there.
very anti-fire.
They have well, that's good. You should be equally anti-cancer, and then just like we have fire departments, we should have Medicare
That's why
for all.
I think people who eat well and don't smoke and make good decisions should be rewarded for human agency.
Yeah, which is not at all what
because the inverse of your statement. I just want to make sure this is clear. The inverse is you say that people should not be penalized for factors outside of their control. The inverse is that I think people should be rewarded for factors inside of their control.
Yeah, and most of what we've got right now is not about.
No, I agree with that.
But
I want a system that rewards people for good choices.
Okay, so here's what I want to ask, real quick,
sure.
I promise. So we established earlier how much we both liked Jeff Bezos.
Yes.
Dislike best Jeff Bezos.
Are you going to ask me, should I raise his taxes?
Well, because this is why I'm curious about it.
Because
I saw in 2019.
Yes, with Kyle Kalinske.
Yeah, and he asked you, would you be willing to raise Jeff Bezos' taxes by like 1% to provide housing for every single homeless veteran? And your response at that time was that you'd hope he'd do it voluntarily. And I think at this point we've established that's not going to happen. He'd prefer to buy a spaceship. So
that's probably true. Yeah. So if you put a gun to my head, would I raise his taxes? I mean, I guess if I was a representative, I guess yes.
Okay, that's good.
For other reasons.
This is progress. I'm so proud of you,
Let me tell you. I said, I guess conditionally, if all of a sudden there would be a comparable piece of legislation alongside of it that would actually value and prioritize things I cared about. If it was just to raise his taxes to go into the current albatross pit of the administrative state, I'd rather have him buy spaceships than give money to Fauci.
But if it was earmarked for a housing for homeless veterans, and you would say yes.
The answer is yes, because I think Jeff Bezos, from a moral
is such
standpoint,
good progress.
But let me tell you why. Let me clarify why.
Sure.
Jeff Bezos games your favorite department, the Postal Service. He games the corporate tax loophole system. Yeah. Jeff Bezos has a total disregard for what I consider to be the American way of life, and he has this weird fascination of going into orbit. And guess what? I hope he stays there.
Okay. Well, I congratulate you on this progress.
Well, I mean, you could call it progress. You could also call it a commitment to prudence.
Okay,
but it's that Greek word prudentia, which is looking at things as they are, and it's a non-dogmatic way of governing yourself and the country, which is a perfect segue to the question I wanted to ask, because we're going to take a short break. We'll be back here with Dr. Burgess. If we're agreeing too much, don't worry. We'll get back to the disagreement first. I'd like to thank Professor Burgess for joining me tonight, as well as Town Circle, who partnered with Turning Point USA to bring you this conversation. I hope you all enjoyed the debate and encourage you to engage with those who do not share your views. If you'd like to learn more about Professor Burgess, check out his books and don't miss his podcast, Give Them an Argument. You can hear the rest of this debate on the Charlie Kirk Show podcast, as well as the Town Circle website. That's Town Circle with an S, towncircle.com, or check out charliekirk.com for the debate on our podcast feed. Debate night, we'll be back soon. God bless you guys.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
Yo, it's Jon Root. Stay tuned because coming up next on TPUSA Live, you can watch the newest episode of POPlitics where pop culture queen Alex Clark will tell you all about Channing Tatum's whack comments regarding Dave Chappelle, Paris Hilton getting into politics, and so much more pop culture without the propaganda. Next on POPlitics.
I feel attacked. Channing Tatum says Dave Chappelle is dangerous and has hurt too many people. Hello? Where are all the workers? The reason Paris Hilton is now calling on Congress. And do you know the crazy story of baby Jessica? If you don't, I'll tell you about it in Pop Culture Rewind. I'm Alex Clark, and this is POPlitics. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Channing Tatum has never been sexy.
All right, that's just a little weird.
And he's especially not now after he posted that Dave Chappelle has hurt so many people.
You're a baby.
Here's the scoop. Channing Tatum wanted to post a clip of Dave Chappelle to his story appreciating his acceptance speech in 2019 for the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor because his words in that acceptance speech really helped him at the time.
I was a soft kid. I was sensitive, I'd cry easy, and I would be scared to fist fight. And my mother used to tell me this thing, I don't even know if you remember, but you said this to me more than once. You said, son, sometimes you have to be a lion so you can be the lamb you really are. I talk this like a lion. I'm not afraid of any of you when it comes word to word. I will gab with the best of them, just so I can chill and be me. And that's why I love my art form, because I understand every practitioner of it. Whether I agree with them or not, I know where they're coming from. They want to be heard. They got something to say. There's something they notice. They just want to be understood. Love this genre. It saved my life.
Such a nice video, right? Well, Channing couldn't post it without a disclaimer that he hates how Dave Chappelle has hurt so many and that he's dangerous to talk about right now.
Honey, you have got to learn to form an opinion.
Oh, and don't worry, Channing also made sure to add that even though that clip helped him, by sharing it, he wasn't excusing anything hurtful.
Call the donor people. Just have them rip my eyes out right now.
If people like you, Channing, would stop making mountains out of molehills in regards to Dave Chappelle and buying into the complaints of people who have never even seen a full act of his, then we wouldn't need to give disclaimers. It's clear they didn't even watch this special because he spent half of it apologizing and lifting up their movement and people.
Hey, baby. Baby, go home, man.
Channing Tatum isn't the only one who's soft. Now, the CEO of Netflix, Ted Sarandos, has given in to the pitchfork wielders too, saying that he screwed up by defending Dave Chappelle. Netflix, just chill. Also, don't forget, this is the same guy who defended Cuties.
Oh my God, where are all the men?
Forget men. We can't even find people in general. Where the heck are all the workers? Stimulus money is done, so how come I keep going to my favorite restaurants and stores only to see that they're closed because there aren't enough people to work there? Are you experiencing this?
Excuse me, where's everybody going?
I truly don't know. I don't get it. I'd like to hear your theories, but I do know that the solution from the government is going to be that they need to go ahead and take over entire industries since we're falling short on our end by not finding people to work.
I'm not gonna lie. It's gonna be bad.
Okay, here's an example. I want to buy a new couch so bad. I've had the same couch since I first moved out, and it is definitely time for something else. And every store I go to tells me, well, it's gonna be like 8 months before you can actually get one because all the couch parts are stuck in the ocean on a ship or something. It's not even just a retail problem. 911 dispatch centers are experiencing a shortage. Denver, in particular, is really bad.
Hello, 911?
This is 911. What you doing?
I'm dying.
Oh, shit. Without me?
If you live in Denver and you try to call 911 right now, you could be put on hold for up to 2 minutes.
I'm gonna order something. 911? Yes.
Jesus Christ, man.
What? You don't know how hungry I am. It's a emergency, dude.
It's not an emergency. Just call Domino's.
Hungry as
The National Emergency Number Association says that the national standard should be that 90% of 911 calls should be answered within 10 seconds, and that 95% of 911 calls should be answered within 20 seconds. Knowing that, Denver is not currently meeting those national standards.
We're gonna die.
We did die.
Are we in hell?
I knew it.
Oh my God. Since we are talking about phones, here's something to lighten the mood. Remember that Fisher-Price rotary phone that we all had when we were little? Here's a really old commercial for it from like 1978. I mean, even our parents played with this.
Fisher-Price toys keep their promises. They promise to keep their heads, and their wheels, their handles, and their lovely sense of humor. That's why in this changing world, there are at least two things you can count on. Children are still children, and Fisher-Price is still Fisher-Price.
Well, Fisher-Price just made an adult version of this that is a real working phone for $60 that connects to your iPhone or Android. You can get it at Best Buy. If I was a boss and I had my own office, I would absolutely get this and set it on my desk, and then I would interrupt meetings and be like, sorry, I have to take this call. You know Michael Scott would love this.
Hey, how you doing, love mama? Let me whisper in your ear.
Paris Hilton is getting into politics. She's calling on Congress to help shut down troubled teen facilities like the one that her and Kat Von D were forced to go to as teenagers. The facilities basically kidnap them in the middle of the night to take them away for behavioral problems.
I want to do it because it's fun. It's fun to do bad things.
In an op-ed for the Washington Post, Paris wrote, "When I was 16 years old, I was awakened one night by two men with handcuffs. They asked if I wanted to go the easy way or the hard way before carrying me from my home as I screamed for help. I had no idea why or where I was being taken against my will. I soon learned I was being sent to hell. I was choked, slapped across the face, spied on while showering, and deprived of sleep. I was called vulgar names and forced to take medication without a diagnosis. At one Utah facility, I was locked in solitary confinement in a room where the walls were covered in scratch marks and bloodstains."
Who does that?
She said this industry has been thriving for decades, and parents have no idea what really goes on inside these places. Breitbart reports that Paris is now calling on President Biden and Congress to enact a basic federal Bill of Rights for young people in congregate care. I stand with Paris. How about you?
Say 3 nice things about Lindsay Lohan.
She's beyond lame and embarrassing.
Okay.
Addison Rae has signed a deal to do a reality show on Snapchat about going back to her hometown in Louisiana.
Addison, stay hydrated. Hydrated? Wait, what's his name?
After TikTok banned her for a sec last week for showing her butt, Snapchat has snuck in to seal a deal. Pretty smart, if you ask me. Fun fact, no one knows this, but POPlitics was originally supposed to be the first ever conservative Snapchat show, but last minute, Snapchat got scared and pulled out. That's how we ended up on IGTV instead. You're lost, Snapchat.
Shut up. You shut up.
I know I'm not supposed to pick favorites, but I love Pop Culture Rewind so much. It's time to travel back in time and see what happened this week in pop culture history. In 1973 this week, the grandson of J. Paul Getty, an oil tycoon who was once the richest man in the world, was kidnapped. One day after he'd gone missing, his grandson's ear was cut off by the kidnappers and sent to a newspaper in Rome with a note that said, "This is Paul's ear. If we don't get some money within 10 days, then the other ear will arrive." In other words, he will arrive in little bits.
You sound very beautiful.
This week in 1985, the first Blockbuster video rental store opened in Dallas, Texas. So many memories. I still really miss this place.
Imagine the perfect video store.
It would have a great selection, right? Right! Over 10,000 videos. 3 evening rentals, so no rush, no hassle. Fast checkout. 24-hour quick drop return. Open late every night. Well, the perfect video store.
Welcome to Blockbuster Video. In 1987, baby Jessica McClure Morales was rescued from a well in her aunt's backyard in Midland, Texas at only 18 months old. Over the next 56 hours, rescuers worked to successfully free her from the 8-inch well casing, approximately 22 feet below ground level.
As the hours turned into days, the country became transfixed on the situation. Everybody was watching.
We've been anxious. The eyes, the hearts, the minds of people around the world have been on Jessica McClure underground in Midland, Texas.
At that point, baby Jessica was dubbed everybody's baby. People sent cards, money, toys, flowers, anything they could do to donate and give support to this family.
Rescuers eventually drilled a vertical shaft parallel to the well and then bored a horizontal tunnel through solid rock.
The rescuer had to be very careful because one wrong pull, he could snap her spine or he could kill her.
Then, after an exhausting 58 hours, Jessica was finally pulled from the well.
Jessica McClure is up. She's alive. What a fight.
The next year, in 1988 this week, Roseanne premiered on ABC. Despite what woke critics say, this would become one of the most famous TV families ever.
You know it'd be really good for breakfast?
What?
Pie.
Tell him no.
No.
And in 2001, this week, Grand Theft Auto 3 was released, creating a genre of open-world action-adventure video games, as well as spurring controversy around violence in new video games. And that's what happened this week in pop culture history. Tonight, a brand new episode of The Spillover comes out at midnight Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific. This is my most personal episode yet, and it's gonna be very different because the spotlight is really gonna be on me and some of your other favorite girls in the conservative movement. You can find out exactly what the episode is about at 9 p.m. Eastern tonight on the POPlitics Instagram. And when this episode comes out, make sure you leave your weekly 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. I know for a fact this episode you are gonna wanna send to all of your conservative friends. Heart this episode, then make your case. Is Channing Tatum hot or not? Also, have you ever heard of Baby Jessica? And would you have liked POPlitics better as a Snapchat show, or do you like what it is now on Instagram? Share this episode to your stories and hit that save button. We're back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. It's pop culture without the propaganda every single day. I'm Alex Clark, and this is POPlitics. Support POPlitics, the first ever conservative pop culture daily show, by subscribing to our channel, turning on notifications, and of course, hitting the thumbs up. Also, our main home is on Instagram. Seriously, just trust me, that's where the real magic happens. Follow us there at POPlitics.